Welcome, everyone. I'm calling the November 10th City Council meeting to order. This meeting is being held 1 week later than normal due to the general election, which was held last week. I'd like to excuse Councilmember Hall, who will be arriving later to join us for tonight's meeting. As a reminder, we still continue to have a remote aspect to our meetings, and both staff and members of the public may be participating in tonight's meeting remotely via WebEx. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite you to join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we have several special business items this evening and also a lot of other items that the public would like to speak to. So it could be a little bit of a longer night for us all tonight. The first item is ID 1925, and it's the recognition of Fire Chief Ben Lane. Chief, can you join me at the lectern?
Unless you're willing to stay on.
Ben loves being embarrassed like this. It's his favorite thing. So tonight I just want to, on behalf of the City Council and the Mayor and the administration, just say thank you to Chief Lane for all that he's done in the last few years as our Chief of Eastside Fire and Rescue. I got to meet Ben way back in the day, for me, 12 years ago. He's been here a lot longer than that, but since the day I got on council, I was already working with Ben and the Eastside Fire and Rescue team. It's really impressive what Ben has been able to do, the leadership, the transition process that he's run, and he's been really easy to work with. He's somebody that I can call up and really ask a hard question, and he just digs in and goes through it with me. We've had a wonderful partnership. I'm so proud of the leadership that he has delivered to our community and to his team, but I'm going to miss him, and I think we're all going to miss him. He's been a fixture around here for a long time, so I'm going to let Chief Lane have an opportunity to talk for a little bit about the time that he's been with the fire department, and it's quite a long time. Ben.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council, members of the community, city staff, Ben Lane, your outgoing retiring fire chief. To think that somebody who was hired by this organization over 31 years ago would be here in front of you tonight as the fire chief, absolutely no way. Some of my best memories are responding out of the fire station directly across the street from here today. First, I want to recognize and appreciate the men and women throughout Eastside Fire and Rescue and the service that they provide to this community and others. I want to say thank you to council, city staff, the mayor for the unwavering support of your fire department. It's been an absolute honor and privilege to serve as your fire chief. I wish the city and all involved nothing but the best in the future. And maybe I'll be back someday providing public comment or something like that. But thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Wally, could you take a picture? We're just giving Ben a recognition of his service. So it's a tile from the city of Issaquah with his name on it. And congratulations. We have another recognition coming up under special business, ID 1929. It's the recognition of Police Officer John Lindner. And I'd like to invite the Police Chief, Paula Schwann, and Officer Lindner to the lectern. Come on up.
Thank you. Council President Walsh, Council, Madam Mayor, and the public. John Lindner comes from a family of law enforcement. His father worked for the King County Sheriff's Department, and he has graced and been so professional with our city for the last 27 years. And in that capacity, in the 27 years, Lindner has been a patrol officer, a detective, an SRO, active shooter trainer, a mentor, special operations team leader, a motor officer, background investigator, and a station officer, handling all online reports as a station officer. And since late January of 2023, as a station officer, he himself has handled 823 calls in 1 year, and 18 arrests, which a lot of online calls are follow-ups. So the fact that he handled that many was even a huge task. And in his career total, he's had more than 11,042 calls for service, which is a lot. His experience and dedication will be greatly missed. Please join me in wishing him a huge thanks in all his service and dedication and professionalism over the years, and a happy retirement.
So while John is recovering, I also just want to say that this is the first retirement of a police officer that I've been here that is almost as long as I've lived here. So he has been a familiar face to me for years and years. And it is sad to see him retire, but happy for him as well. So congratulations. Do you want to say anything? It's not required.
Well, let me just get through this. Last 4 years haven't been easy for me. I lost my wife in 21, so these are hard because she supported me, throughout this career, and you can't do it without family. But I have a backup family, and that's the men and women in the back room that I work with and at the department. So a lot of people ask, well, how come you just not, you got the age, you got the time, why not retire out? And it's because I still needed to find some sort of strength or whatever to carry on. And that's finally happened. I want to thank the community. Probably my favorite memories of this working in this community, even when I'm pulling them over for traffic violations. Just their support. I mean, I can't stop, I can't walk into a store, I can't do a traffic stop without someone driving by or walking by saying, thanks for your service, don't listen to what they're saying to you guys. You're needed here, you're loved here. Another reason why I didn't want to hang it up early. 27 years ago in this room, I did my oral boards. Back then, when we were sworn in on the oath, we did it in this room with everyone. And so it's kind of fitting that I'm back here, I'm retiring out from here. So I have zero regrets of working here. It's been a blast. The last 4 years, I also lost my parents. My father was 31 years as a detective sergeant, and it was the blessing of that was I had a mentor the whole time, and someone who I could talk to about the job. And so anyway, I miss everyone. I'm going to miss this place. So thanks for having me along, I guess.
Can we take a picture with your family up here? Guys, do you want to come up? Girls, let's go.
Do you want to give him?
Yeah, where is it?
You've got a plaque.
John, this is from all of us, just a reminder of how proud we are and how we're going to miss you. And I would love it, guys, if we go right in front of the dais and girls, and let's take our picture with John's family.
Come on over.
You guys have done this drill before.
Uh-huh.
Everybody fits in.
There you go.
And thank you all for coming.
Mm-hmm.
Our next item of business is not necessarily as emotional as the one we just had. It is the Accounting Day Proclamation. This is ID 1865. And Finance Director Kristen Garcia and Senior Financial Analyst Brittany Hensley are here with us virtually to accept the proclamation. So welcome, ladies, and I will read your proclamation from here. Whereas International Accounting Day is celebrated on the 10th day of every November to recognize the accounting experts that ensure our financial health and stability. And whereas accountability, transparency, and organization are tantamount in municipal government stewardship of taxpayer resources, accountants in the City of Issaquah's finance team provide responsive, diligent, and accurate service to the City of Issaquah and its community members. Whereas the Finance Department supports Issaquah's services through the development of the budget, accurate financial reporting, audit preparation, monitoring, business tax administration and collection, procurement and accounts payable, utility billing, and payroll. And whereas the City of Issaquah wishes to show appreciation for the many valuable contributions made by its dedicated Finance Department professionals and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service. Now, therefore, I, Mary Lou Pauley, the Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do recognize November 10th, 2025 to be Accounting Day in the City of Issaquah and invite the community to join me in thanking Issaquah's Finance Department for their service and outstanding contributions. Thank you for coming, and Kristen, I'm sure there's a few words you'd like to share.
Yes, thank you so much, and I want to thank Brittany for being on screen tonight to accept this honor. Thank you so much for acknowledging the great work that we do in the Finance Department. This recognition is a reflection of the team's unwavering dedication, professionalism, and commitment to transparency and accountability. The team's exceptional work ensures the integrity of our financial operations and strengthens the trust that's placed in us by our community. I'm really proud to be part of this team, and I want to congratulate every member of the Finance Department for this well-deserved honor, and thank you, Mayor, for the recognition.
That's fantastic. And if you can hang on for a second, Wally, should we get a picture with the proclamation with the ladies? Thank you to both so much, and to the whole department. You really do provide us an amazing professional service in such a friendly and accommodating way. We appreciate you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
For our last item of special business, we're going to do ID 1866, Issaquah Recycles Day Proclamation, and I'm going to invite our Public Works Director, Emily Moon, to come over to the lectern. Okay, welcome. So whereas November 15th recognizes the 30th Annual American Recycles Day, a nationally recognized day for businesses, government agencies, and individuals to consider the importance of recycling and commit to reducing and diverting waste. Whereas the City of Issaquah seeks to effectively steward our natural environment to ensure a sustainable legacy for future generations, and whereas the City of Issaquah strives to reduce waste, conserve natural resources, prevent pollution, and save energy, these goals are advanced through robust compost and recycling programs. And whereas Issaquah is a leader in demonstrating the next generation of sustainability in the Pacific Northwest and serves as a model for innovation, collaboration, and effectiveness, in large part due to the Issaquah's Public Works Department and solid waste and sustainability programs. And whereas the City of Issaquah wishes to show appreciation for its environmental and sustainability program professionals, now therefore I, Mary Lou Pauley, the Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do recognize November 15th, 2025 to be Issaquah Recycles Day. Emily, would you like to share some thoughts with the group?
Thank you all very much. I will just say, read up on how you can save some money, get a smaller garbage cart, get a bigger recycling cart, get a yard waste cart for your use, and support our businesses in their efforts to also recycle. Make your voice heard as you go out to those establishments. Thank them for participating actively in our programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily. That's a question for the clerk. Are there comments, were there comments added for the audience comments portion of tonight, or am I winging it? I'm winging it, okay. So the next item of business this evening is audience comments, and members of the public may address the council at this time, in person or virtually. In the room, you would use the microphone there in the center. Those who signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first. And if you're joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand or send the host a chat message. If you're on the phone, press *3, and if you have joined by computer or smartphone, you could look for a hand icon. If you're in the room and didn't sign up, I'll make sure to ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. And City Clerk, I believe we do have people signed up today. So I will read the guidelines for those making comments. You're invited to address the council regarding matters that are directly related to Issaquah's programs, projects, services, or events. Oh, and here it is. Actually, it's in the script. Sorry. So the City Clerk has added a clarification in here tonight on one of the items that we have on the agenda. So we have an agenda bill this evening with the Bellevue College Development Agreement, and I just want to make sure, because there's been information out there in many different formats that isn't exactly accurate. And so I want to make sure that people are here joining us tonight, either in the room or virtually, and are going to make comments that tonight, the vote that the council is taking does not include an approval for the location of a Bellevue College campus or any high school in the Issaquah Highlands at this time. It's a different question that the council will be dealing with tonight, and there'll be a presentation and questions and answers from the council to make sure that this is clear when we get to that item. So please direct your comments to the whole council and not an individual. And while this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When you are recognized, if you are a virtual attendee, unmute your microphone. If you're in the room, please step up to the lectern in the center. And the microphone is on right now, but if somebody turns it off, you do have to turn it on in the center of the stand in order to get the red light. State your name and address or relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently, and limit comments to 5 minutes. If you are attending virtually and you do not respond after your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will need to proceed, and you are encouraged to rejoin the meeting if you're able to. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. Public comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process, and the city takes comments seriously. I want to thank everybody online and in the room tonight for taking time to talk with the City Council. And City Clerk, if you could please identify the first person who signed up to speak this evening.
Yes, Mayor. We currently have 13 people signed up to speak. The first is Kevin Nichols.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Nichols, and I live at 352 Wilderness Peak Drive Northwest. I'm here to provide public comment on the Bellevue College Development Agreement extension. This vote looks very technical, just another extension, but in my opinion, it's not. In practice, this can decide who controls the future of 19 acres that could serve our community for generations. Since the September 8th Committee of the Whole meeting, where this was last discussed, amendments were made to require council approval of new development, but only if the development is entirely standalone housing. These amendments still allow Bellevue College to pursue its publicly stated goal of revenue maximization with minimal, if any, oversight in most circumstances. With the new amendments, if Bellevue College builds solely standalone housing, they do need your approval. That makes sense. But if they build, for example, up to 228 housing units and a single 1,200 square foot public library, it's about the size of one residential equivalent unit under the agreement and roughly the size of this room, they can bypass you completely and require no further review. There is no written requirement to meaningfully incorporate feedback, just a requirement to hold some public discussion. There's also no council review in most of those situations. At a bare minimum, this agreement should require council approval for anything beyond purely institutional use. But I think there's an even bigger point. Who is best positioned to facilitate community discussions and make decisions in Issaquah's best interests? Let me be clear, I deeply respect Bellevue College, and I value its contribution to our region. But a state institution's budget difficulties cannot be balanced on the back of a small city's limited budget and limited land resources. The college is honestly admirably transparent that their goal is maximizing revenue, and I understand why they have to do that. I appreciate that honesty. But when revenue for a state institution is the primary goal, I think that creates a conflict of interest in determining what serves Issaquah's best needs, and a conflict of interest in facilitating discussion. The city can't force a school to be built, no matter how many people want it. I appreciate that. You can't make affordable housing or community centers just appear, but you can put your thumb on the scale. You can preserve possibilities and bring the right parties to the table. You can facilitate conversations between the school district as well as nonprofits and community groups. If you vote no and likely maintain institutional use only past the end of the year, you're more likely to establish influence and put the city in a stronger bargaining position. If you vote yes, we should be honest that the vast majority of those 19 acres will become market rate housing. I recently had the opportunity to knock on many doors throughout the Highlands, and the desire for a school on that site was overwhelming. Not unanimous, but overwhelming. And I know school board members who want to explore this location to relieve pressure on other sites. But that exploration needs someone to facilitate it in ways that haven't happened yet. The city is very well positioned to do that. Bellevue College is not. I sincerely hope the college finds solutions to its state funding difficulties, but those solutions should not come at the expense of Issaquah's long-term flexibility and needs. So the fundamental question is, should a state institution's budget needs drive development of one of Issaquah's last large parcels? And if not, what can you do about it? At a minimum, the council should amend this agreement to require council approval on all but institutional use. That will help prevent bad outcomes. That's still not optimal, though, as to get a good outcome, we'll need a good public process and coordination between multiple nonprofits or government entities. The city will be able to do a better job. While you, of course, can't vote on that directly, that's not what this vote is, you can put your thumb on that scale, and you can make it more likely to become your responsibility and yours to lead. Please vote no. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration.
City Clerk, who's next on the speakers list tonight?
Yes, Shuyu Cow. Is Shuyu here?
Are they online potentially?
I don't see anyone by that name online.
Okay.
So I'm going to move to the next speaker. Chinmay Nagarkar.
I don't see Chinmay here.
All right. Next is Sarah Hui.
I do see Sarah Hui.
Good evening, council members. How are you? I'm Sarah Hoy. I'm the executive director for Issaquah Highlands. I'd like to speak to you about this Bellevue College Development Agreement. This was originally signed in 2010 between Grand Glacier and the city of Issaquah. The agreement clearly outlines the authorities of the parties, and the agreement contains several key provisions directly binding IHCA. Sections 10 of the CCNR state, all development on the property is subject to the rules, standards, and approval of the IHCA ARC, including cost-sharing fees. Section 11, authority, explicitly affirms IHCA's authority over architectural review and compliance, as well as Section 12, which establishes that the city will extend the term of the development agreement from December 31st, 2005 to 2040 if needed. Issaquah Highlands is mentioned over 400 times in the development agreement. However, during your PDE, or Planning Development Environmental Committee, and the City Council meetings in July, none of the listed recommendations for actions were to contact IHCA and discuss it with us. Given these facts, IHCA, as the largest HOA in the state of Washington, is asking for City Council to vote for what is right, whether it be an extension or a termination of the current agreement. All parties need to work together to establish a fair and legal plan. IHCA must have a seat at the table. Having this development agreement decision 28 years later without IHCA's input is a procedural flaw. It is disrespectful to the thousands of IHCA residents and the IHCA administration and the board of directors. As the IHCA director for more than a decade, I've worked tirelessly to uphold community standards and design guidelines. I've overseen personally the final transition from Grand Glacier and Port Blakely. This work is not simple, nor should it be rushed. It is a legal process that has to be done properly. So I must ask tonight, why the rush? Why is the city moving to end a long-standing agreement without public input or a professional courtesy of consulting with the IHCA board and management? The optics for this process have been terrible. It is also crucial to clarify with city council members again that there are 3 separate corporations in the Highlands: IHCA, Highlands Council, and Highlands Fiber Network. While some council members may have discussed with the Highlands Council director, respectfully, that organization has no legal authority to speak on behalf of IHCA's on matters of architectural control, compliance, or development agreements. That responsibility lies solely with IHCA. Finally, I urge you to consider the impacts of adding more residential homes to an institutionally planned parcel. Our streets are already at capacity with traffic. Infrastructure demands are not being met. Our community is still waiting for a promised bike park at Central Park. City of Issaquah, as well as Issaquah Highlands residents, would benefit from a new community center with a pool to support sports groups, such as the Issaquah swim team and local teen activities. Most importantly, IHCA would be greatly impacted by new housing if that was to move forward. Adding new housing would require extensive legal expense on behalf of IHCA to ensure that our association's rights are protected and our governing documents are reflected on these new parcels. This is not just about the process. It's about honoring nearly 3 decades of careful development planning, ensuring accountability, and doing what is right for the Issaquah Highlands community with full transparency. Please take the time to bring IHCA and its residents to the table so that we can collaborate for the community's best interest. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Sarah. I apologize. I think I said hooey and you said hooey.
That's okay.
I will get it at some point. Apologies. City Clerk, who's next up?
Natalie Anderson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Natalie Anderson, and I am speaking as a parent of the Issaquah School District and a member of this community. My family and I live in the Maple Hills community on the Renton-Issaquah border. I prefer not to give my physical address for security purposes. I'm here to speak on the Bellevue College Agreement. The Highland parcel represents a rare opportunity. Our school district is heavily constrained geographically, and there are very few parcels like this anywhere within district boundaries. Finding sites large enough for school facilities is difficult. This 19-acre site is especially valuable because of the size and location. Its proximity to Central Park also creates an opportunity for the district and city to collaborate on sports fields that could serve students and the broader community. I recognize this puts you in a challenging position. Only the school district can ultimately decide to build a school, but that option depends on the city's land use decision today. You're being asked to preserve a possibility for something that might not happen for years. This kind of forward thinking is hard, but it's also what makes this moment so important. Opportunities like this don't come around often. And in regard to land, believe me when I tell you, they aren't making any more of it. In all seriousness, though, tonight's vote isn't directly about whether to build a school here, but it will determine whether that remains a possibility. If this agreement is extended, this land will almost certainly be developed for housing, and the option to use it for educational facilities disappears. So while you're not voting to build a school, you are deciding whether to keep the door open. The site could serve as a standalone school, as part of a full build-out for the high school currently planned in Providence Point, or for other educational needs as our community grows. Additionally, school capacity will be needed as our region grows. The more sites we preserve now, the better positioning the district will be to make good decisions when the time comes. When the city sold this land to Bellevue College in 2011, it was with the understanding that it would serve a public purpose. I hope we can honor that intent and preserve this possibility for our community's children. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. City Clerk, who's next up?
Dave Osmer.
I had somebody on my list as well, Jay Sternoff. Is he in a different order on the list?
He's asked to be moved down, yes.
Okay, great. Welcome, Dave.
Good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. My name is Dave Osmer. I live in Providence Point. And many or most of you actually have heard me numerous times, and usually I'm up here complaining about something. But I'm going to flip the switch, flip the script, and actually support something for a change. And I'm going to do it very quickly so I don't use too much of your time. We, as you well know, have an issue with this high school at Providence Heights. We would absolutely love to see a high school on this Bellevue College property. And whatever you can do, I don't know what the right answer is, whatever you can do to preserve that option, we'd very much appreciate it and put it there instead of in our backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. City Clerk?
Now we have Jay Sternoff.
Welcome, Jay.
My name is Jay Sternoff, and I also live in Providence Point. I have deep roots in this community, going back to Bellevue College, being in the first graduating class at the current campus, and then continuing to move to Cougar Mountain in the late 70s. With that said, this was before it was part of the city of Issaquah. The commonality was the owner of the Seattle Seahawks at the time worked on the development for what you know as areas like Tallis, as well as Port Blakely that is being discussed right now. My father always talked about living in a neighborhood where he working in a neighborhood where he lived, and unfortunately, in the last 50 plus years since World War II, that hasn't happened. And we are trying to build communities where people live where they work. And yes, there is an important need to have affordable housing, senior housing, even though the previous speaker spoke about the largest homeowners association. Providence Point happens to be the largest senior community in this city. With that said, I can strongly suggest whatever you can do, whether it's voting for it tonight or voting against it. But public education is important. It's important to not only the children themselves, but to the grandparents like myself. And I hope tonight that the decision you make will move education closer to the community rather than moving the community further away from education. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. City Clerk, do we have anyone indicating a desire to speak online?
We do, but we have a few other folks in the room.
Sorry, your
who
list is
signed up.
longer. Yeah,
That's
sorry.
okay. So Corby Kassler is next.
Good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. I'm Corby Kassler, and I'm here speaking on behalf of myself as a resident, but also on behalf of DIA as the executive director. I sent you another letter this evening, and I don't want to get into the details around that, but I do want to ask the council to reconsider and affirm the original commitment to fund DIA for 2025 and 2026. We were told just this month that the city would no longer fund DIA through the Main Street Tax Credit Incentive Program, which again gives you 25 cents on the dollar. It's an investment that no other nonprofit has that kind of return on. It really makes it difficult to manage a budget when you're given such short notice, and it also makes you question the responsibility when such funds are given back to the state because it won't go through the tax credit incentive program. I know it's a complex issue. It's one of those that people find hard to understand. That's why I keep going back to the 25 cents on the dollar. And if it isn't spent here, it's spent elsewhere. This has been devastating to me personally as a resident, just because I had high expectations of my leaders and I expected more. But it's also devastating because I support the businesses downtown. I know them. I've become close to many of them. I work on their behalf tirelessly. That's what DIA is all about, is to support the small businesses in downtown Issaquah. It's all about bringing together volunteers and community members and the businesses to find commonality and to build a community that is second to none. DIA provides economic stimulus, beautification, and technical assistance to downtown's vulnerable businesses. They depend on foot traffic, simple processes, and support derived from true understanding of their needs. They can be vulnerable. Some of these businesses are struggling. Even in the Q4, we're finding that our businesses are not getting the foot traffic that they need, and we are intent and focused on making sure that that is improved for the final quarter of this year. DIA understands and champions those businesses, but I worry about their future. I worry about what happens without this funding in a lot of ways, but I will fight like hell on their behalf. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kirby. City Clerk?
Yes, next we have Judy Eklund.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Councilwoman Amen. I too represent the Downtown Issaquah Association. My name is Judy Eklund, and I've been a longtime resident of Issaquah. And for the last several years, I've been doing a lot of volunteering with DIA. And the last 2 years, I've chaired the Economic and Design Committee. As a tax-paying citizen of Issaquah and a former business owner on Front Street, I was very disappointed last week when I found out that the funding that was promised to DIA has been canceled. These are Issaquah taxpayer dollars that should be utilized here and not sent anywhere else. One way DIA uses these funds is to help promote the businesses by providing experiences that help drive patrons to downtown, ensuring an increased revenue. Many of our local artists and musicians and cottage businesses benefit from these opportunities as well. This helps enhance the downtown experience for the patrons. DIA does its best to be good stewards with the funds provided by the hardworking citizens. So please, I ask the city to reconsider and continue funding the Downtown Issaquah Association. And I thank you for your service and for your time.
Thank you, Judy. City Clerk?
Yes, David Kapler.
Mr. Kapler.
Good evening, David Kapler, 255 Southeast Andrews Street. A couple of people here tonight. I should pass this on to them as well. But last week they had a meeting at the fire station over on Newport for about PFAS, the chemical used in firefighting, the foam, and the problems it has created in our water supply and the region's water supply. They did an excellent job at having a very informative format, and it was just really a well done event. After I graduated from Bellevue High School in 1966.
Louder, please.
I attended college at the Newport High School, where Bellevue Community College at that time was there for 2 years while they were building their campus. I had a very excellent time there. I was working a lot during the day, and going to school at night was worked into my schedule quite well. I'm sure I had a soft spot later when I was on the council and was met at which then I believe then was called Bellevue College, not Bellevue Community College. And I met with the president, and she maybe had some other staff there, and there were another council member or community member with me, and we talked about the possibilities of a college not the full campus, but some kind of a facility there. And so I'm kind of been involved or interested in this for a long time. Now, I was glad to see the compliance list here for that the city has established with compliance with applicable environmental, critical area, stormwater, tree preservation requirements, and the effect, the time of and effects that are in effect at the time of proposed development. I've been on that site a lot. I hadn't been on it. I was on it a couple years ago when the largest homeless camp was on the site. Finally, it got cleaned up. And I was up there today. I just had to go check, and I found 2 pieces of litter on the site, which maybe weren't missed by them, but came in later. But I'm familiar with the ground. I think it's got some limitations for what could be done there. That's a very big concern I have. It's when if you looked at the Bayless concept in your packet, it shows a sea of roofs, okay? And that stormwater has to go somewhere, and there's a U of city park surrounding the developable, in quotes, area. It's got some real complications there. My personal interest in seeing that is getting the King County Land Park and Open Space people interested in the site. I think that's the best chance we have to bail out the college on the site. To develop it, I think, is extremely difficult to do. One thing I would like to see that in that same area is taken on, just to the north of that property, adjoining it, is I don't know how many feet deep a pile of clay. In terracing the eastern part of Issaquah Highlands, all the junk soil was stacked there, and nothing hardly grows on it. Puddles are there for long periods after rain because clay is a great way to seal soil so water can't get down through it. And that's what has happened there. We're trying to figure out how we deal with that park property there in some way, and then in the college property as part of an open space plan, I think, is the realistic way to deal with it over time. So thank you for the opportunity to speak here.
Thank you, David. City Clerk?
Barbara Mayfield.
I'm not as tall as he is.
Nobody-
My name is Barbara Mayfield. I am not a resident of Issaquah. I live in North Bend, but I opened my own business in 2015 on the west side of Issaquah, and I recently moved 2.5 years ago, almost 3, to the downtown Issaquah Plaza. On the very day that I moved in, I was approached by DIA, offering their resources to find sources for signs, for permits, to be an active business in the downtown Issaquah core. And I have really enjoyed and thrived in the downtown Issaquah Plaza. A year later, I joined DIA. I'm on their board. I don't want to hide that. I think they are a valuable asset in the downtown Issaquah area. They support the businesses constantly. And I would be very sad to see the council not stand up to their commitment a year ago to support them. And I'm sad to see the possibility that the tax funds that could come to Issaquah may be diverted somewhere else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Barbara. City Clerk?
Linda Timone.
Hi, I'm Linda Timone. I live in the Highlands on 10th Avenue Northeast. I didn't realize I got actually signed in online, apparently. I just want to speak briefly. I think that the Bellevue Community College had wonderful foresight in 2010 when they bought the property for educational purposes, and in 2013 wrote that wonderful summary, 45 pages as I recall, of why this is such a benefit. I agree, and it should be maintained for educational purposes. Thank you. Or whatever the Highlands management thinks should be go there.
Thank you, Linda. City Clerk?
Elizabeth Maupin is with us virtually. Elizabeth, I'm making you a panelist now, so you should be able to unmute and can choose to turn your video on.
Hello.
We can hear you.
My name is Elizabeth Maupin. I've been a resident of Issaquah since 1982. And I'm one of those people who doesn't have a very high income. I have a great appreciation for the work of ARCH, a regional coalition for housing. I understand you're considering something from them, and I hope that you will consider that people who make 80% or more of the area median income can usually find housing. So I hope that the housing that you're supporting from ARCH is more like 60% and below, because those are the people who are really struggling to find housing, and many of them are long-term members of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. City Clerk?
Yes, next we have another virtual commenter, Landon Halverson. Landon, I'm making you a panelist now. You should be able to unmute and can choose to turn your video on.
Alrighty, can folks hear and see me?
We can hear you, we cannot see you.
I'm so sorry. My apologies. My Wi-Fi is not outstanding. I'm in Los Angeles right now on a work trip. However, I did want to call in and have my voice be heard tonight.
We can see you now, Landon, so it's all good. It was just delayed.
Wonderful. Well, I just wanted to say tonight, as you consider the Bellevue College campus in the Highlands, I am very concerned, just from a taxpayer perspective, that we would be in a position where we have allowed Bellevue College essentially to take this land with the idea that it would serve a public purpose, and then ultimately not serve a public purpose. It was given, or not given, but rather sold at a significantly discounted rate. Again, with the idea that it would have some sort of benefit, some sort of public benefit to the residents of not just the Issaquah Highlands, but the entire city of Issaquah. And my hope is that as you consider the future of the development agreement, you'll consider the sacrifices the city made when they did that, when they made that choice in 2010, and thinking about the ways that we can work on behalf of the entire city to ensure that young people have a place to go to school, whether that be through Bellevue College or through a K-12 school with the Issaquah School District or another proposal. But I would ultimately encourage you all on council to consider what we did for Bellevue College and what sort of expectations we have in return, just to respect the taxpayers who made the sacrifice in the beginning in 2010. Thank you.
Thank you, Landon. City Clerk?
That is the end of the advanced sign-up list.
Okay, so we'll look into the room first. Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening that did not have an opportunity to speak? And City Clerk, can you look on? Oh, was this bad? Okay. And City Clerk, I'll give you a minute to look online to see if we have any additional raised hands.
No additional raised hands.
Thank you. So I want to just say thank you to everyone who provided comments tonight. We heard a lot of information about the Bellevue College Development Agreement proposed extension, and a big focus on making sure that there is a public benefit to this property. Also, lack of coordination with the Issaquah, say it wrong, Sarah, Issaquah IHCA. I'm not even going to say it. I'm just going to use the acronym, IHCA. We heard about DIA's funding for 2025 and 2026. We heard about PFAS and also a comment about Bellevue College, potentially parks and open space as well. We also had a caller talk about affordable housing and the item we have from Original Coalition for Housing that's on the agenda this evening. And I believe that covers all the topics. So I just want to thank you all. It's so beneficial whether you can join us in the room or join us online to be able to share your thoughts and comments. And I hope that you're able to stay as this agenda bill for the Bellevue College Development Extension is talked about later. So thanks very much. As a reminder, for anyone watching or out in the audience, comments can be submitted at any time to our City Council at citycouncil@issaquah.gov. And the next item of business is the consent calendar. I have a couple of comments to share before we actually move to a motion for that. On item M, B&O Tax Online Payment Processor Agreement on tonight's consent calendar. There is a vendor agreement with a company called Authorized.net, which is the final step needed to enable local business taxpayers to submit their business and occupation tax returns online and also to be able to pay via credit card, debit card, or electronic check. I want to a big thank you out to our finance and our IT team for partnering together to find this creative solution to provide customers with a secure, modern, and convenient online payment system. Once this agreement is approved, our teams will be testing this new system with a goal to go live early next year. Moving forward, our team is also researching longer-term end-to-end software solutions that will be able to improve our efficiencies within our internal business and operation processing. I'm going to go to some committee chairs. Are there any committee chairs or chair designates who would like to report on any items on the consent calendar this evening? Not seeing any. I do have a couple of comments to share from Councilmember Hall, who's not yet been able to join the meeting tonight. He had a lot of items that he wanted to address on the consent agenda. First, tonight's consent calendar includes AB 9063, the 2025 Comprehensive Plan Amendments and Rezone for your approval. This agenda bill represents a year's worth of hard work from staff, the Planning Policy Commission, the Transportation Advisory Board, the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee, and the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee, all of which approved it unanimously. This year's comprehensive plan docket included adding policy allowing co-living housing to comply with State House Bill 1998, a rezone for the food bank site from community facilities to retail, an updated transportation element to comply with State House Bill 1181, and two other items that have been deferred for future consideration. They were trickier than we had anticipated this time around, and they were change the name of single-family zones to more accurately reflect multi-unit capabilities, and the removal of the capital facilities land designation. Regarding co-living and housing, HB 1998 requires cities to allow co-living housing in all zones that allow at least 6 units per site. It restricts some local parking requirements, and it was adopted into Title 18 back in February. Now we're adopting it into the comp plan to ensure consistency with our city code. With regards to the rezone of the food bank site, the hearing examiner reviewed and agreed. We want to ensure council that the land use change doesn't impact any redevelopment limitations due to its partial historic landmark status. And regarding the update on the transportation element, there were changes to the Mobility Implementation Plan, or the MIP, and to the Mobility Action Plan, or the MAP. And I want to thank, this is a call out to Councilmember Ray for his stroke of genius, according to Councilmember Hall. It also includes some housekeeping to ensure consistency with the MAP, which is the Mobility Action Plan. The other changes were made to comply with the State House Bill 1181 regarding multimodal concurrency. Once again, the Planning Policy Commission, the Transportation Advisory Board, M&I, which I forget what that is, Mobility and Infrastructure, and PDE, Planning, Development, and Environment, were all unanimous. And so we are recommending on the consent agenda tonight that the council approve this along with all the other items. One last chance for any chair comments, and if not, we'll move into the consent calendar was distributed to council in advance, and if authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have.
That was you. Okay, thank you. Does any council member desire to remove any item from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? I'm not seeing an indication to do so. Would somebody like to make a motion? Council President?
I move we approve the consent calendar as distributed.
Second?
Thank you. The motion is to approve the consent calendar as presented. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously, 6-0. We're going to move into regular business, and the first item here tonight is AB 9095. It's a city council statement regarding immigration enforcement, and the request before council this evening is to approve the resolution. This item was brought forward by council leadership, and there's no staff presentation planned for this item. So if necessary, would somebody care to make a motion to approve? And if you don't have the wording, I can give it to you. Council President?
I move we approve resolution number 2025-20, making a statement regarding federal immigration enforcement in Issaquah.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any council discussion? Council President?
Thank you. I know there was some feedback that I had heard and did agree with regarding changing the statement from citizen or non-citizen to regardless of immigration status. And so I would be open to that idea. I just wanted to bring that up as a concept. And for the community or anybody watching, as Issaquah faced quite a challenging period of immigration enforcement at a local preschool and with other members of the community, the council felt it was important to make a statement in support of our community members, regardless of immigration status, and speak to the next steps that were needed because of the Keep Washington Working Act at the state does have some opportunities to push back, but this is a federal enforcement activity, and so there are certain things that are out of our hands, and so part of the letter and statement was talking about our interest to speak to other levels of government that may be better able to make the changes needed to support our community. So those are my statements. I'm happy to make an amendment to make the adjustment to that or let other members do so. I do think we have one other comment there.
Yeah, I will get to Councilmember Jang. Deputy Council President?
Oh, sorry, no.
Councilmember Zhang, you proposed some wording changes. I wonder if you could describe that, and then maybe Council President can just amend it in the motion instead of going through two steps.
Great. Yeah, I would like to amend all the instances in the statement where it says citizen or non-citizen to say regardless of citizenship or immigration status.
Can we consider that a friendly amendment?
Can it be friendly?
There are no such thing as a friendly amendment,
Oh.
but we could say, Mayor could say, is there any objection to the amendment? And if there's none, it could be adopted.
Is there any objection to that amendment? There we go. So thank you for that. And then I'd like to go back and check. We have 5 other council members here. Additional council discussion. Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. Under the first bullet point, the right to legal counsel, where we're saying that every citizen or non-citizen deserves a constitutional right to due process under the law, blah, blah, blah. The right to legal counsel, technically speaking, the right to legal counsel attaches to criminal cases, misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, and felonies. In the immigration arena, legal counsel is not a constitutional right necessarily. While I would love to have that as a right for those proceedings are civil in nature, and legal counsel does not directly attach as a legal right in that case. So I just want to point that out. I think the language would be fine as adopted, as we're a council, but technically speaking, the Sixth Amendment right to legal counsel would only attach in criminal cases and not in immigration cases that are technically civil in nature. So I don't know if my colleagues want to change the language or not. I'm comfortable with it as it is, but I just wanted to point that out and make that clear on any record that might be heard by the outside world. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Council President, it's your motion. Would you like to consider any rewording or just provide a motion to vote on it as amended by Councilmember Zhang?
Unless I hear anything from other members of the council, I think I would stay with the adjustments from Councilmember Zhang.
Okay, additional council member conversation, discussion? Okay, it has been moved and seconded. I have to find that. It has been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2025-20, making a statement regarding federal immigration enforcement in Issaquah as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that carries unanimously, 6-0. The next item of business is AB 9026, the WSDOT Transfer of Development Rights, TDR, Development Agreement and Extension for Bellevue College. And at this time, I'm going to check in with the city administrator. Do we have an ETA on Councilmember Hall?
He should be here shortly. You might want to move on to the school impact fee item.
Okay.
If you'd like, perhaps that can be disposed with quickly. There's not a representative here from the Issaquah School District, so.
Okay. Yes, good question.
I believe, is Councilmember Hall going to be recusing himself from the legislative agenda?
He is,
Oh,
but I don't know that Ms. Helder is,
Oh, may not be ready.
is
Okay.
here. We can try to rustle her up, but I suspect that Councilmember Hall will be here shortly.
So I apologize to all of those that are here for that particular agenda bill, but Councilmember Hall has expressed an interest in being here for that presentation and also the question and answer. So Minnie, let's, is it Kristen or you tonight?
Kristen is online
okay,
virtually.
Fantastic. We're going to make a little adjustment in our
He
agenda.
says he's pulling in, so.
Okay,
Maybe we
we're
just keep
going to
going.
just take a 5-minute break and then he'll be here. So 5-minute recess. for the short delay. We're back. The next item we're going to be dealing with is the one that is listed next. Now we're back. Sorry for the delay. We are going to stick with our original agenda and do AB 9026, the Washington State Department of Transportation Transfer of Development Rights, Development Agreement Extension for Bellevue College. And the action before council this evening will be to amend and approve the resolution. So before I invite staff to present, I have a few comments on this topic, which is a request from Bellevue College to extend their existing development agreement for 2 years. The purpose of this extension is to provide the college with sufficient time to conduct a robust, community-informed public outreach process and develop a comprehensive development plan for their property, ensuring compliance with the latest environmental codes. I want to emphasize what this action is and what it is not. This extension is not an approval for the location of a Bellevue College campus or any high school on this site at this time. It is an approval to allow the college to seek community input and explore all potential development options, including institutional uses. Through this process, Bellevue College has committed to a robust public outreach that will then inform future development scenarios. Following that outreach, institutional use or mixed use would be allowed. However, standalone housing would still require a separate council approval before Bellevue College could submit a land use application. It is also important to note the potential consequences of your decision tonight. If this council does not approve the extension, Bellevue College can still develop the property with any publicly owned institutional use, not necessarily an educational institution. Approving this extension allows us to guide the conversation and ensure the future of this property is truly informed by robust community input. And I'd like to invite Community Planning and Development Director Minnie Dalawa to present this item. Welcome, Minnie.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and community members who are here in person or online. So this item has been in front of council and the council committee previously. So the first few slides, just to refresh everyone's memory. This is, an agreement that was entered in 2011, as was mentioned earlier. The bigger picture with this agreement was there was a lot of open space that was preserved. About 144 acres of forested land was preserved, and this development was contemplated on this property. This is a map that shows Park Point was about 101 acres. Most members in the community that were involved in that probably know this. Additionally, 43 acres of the WSDOT property were preserved, with the idea that 4 of these parcels would get some of those development that was transferred over from those locations. A little bit close-up map. So parcel 1, 2, and 3 were developed at the time. Parcel 4 is the only remaining pending undeveloped property, which is about 20 acres. Back in the day, at the time, a master site development plan was approved by a city council that envisioned these academic buildings. However, things have changed in the past decade, shifting enrollments, online learning, and so on, that Bellevue College could probably go into more detail about that. What is currently entitled for this property under the development agreement is about 372,000 square feet of institutional use, or 310 equivalent residential units. And there's a formula. If you divide 372,000 by 1,200, so 1 unit equates to about 1,200 commercial space, and you come up with the 310. However, there are other provisions in the development agreement that limit the density to 3 to 12 dwelling units per acre, which the math on that turns out to be there's a maximum of 228 residential units. So I just want to be clear that there's this confusion between 310 versus 228. That's how it comes about. The proposed amendments that are in front of you here tonight are a 2-year extension to develop an actual plan for parcel 4. So you're not approving one particular proposal tonight. And as part of this request, Bellevue College has also agreed to comply with applicable environmental, critical areas, stormwater, and tree preservation requirements. There is provision under the agreement that they can, the city has to extend development of this property for an institutional use, but under the terms of the development agreement, which is the old stormwater code, which we know we cannot do legally under our city's NPDES permit, which is a pollution discharge permit. So what has happened in the past, feedback that we received through the council committee, we discussed this at July 8th meeting. It was agreed to pass this on to full council, and to, but some of the feedback was to ensure public benefits from the development of the property. There was some interest in partnering with Bellevue College to gather community input. There was also interest in soliciting input from Issaquah School District. And also, if the development included residential housing, we wanted to ensure that pre-existing paved trails on the property are maintained and have access points, that emergency evacuation was in the minds, to see how this could be mitigated during development. So there was also interest in understanding market rate versus affordable housing options. And then at the full council meeting on July 21st, council referred this motion to September 8th committee of the whole meeting by unanimous consent. Council members were expressed interest in hearing a discussion about different building types, what's currently allowed, what exposure is there to housing under the development agreement, what are the tax implications, options with ISD, what's the surplus process for Bellevue College, what are the affordable requirements, and so on. And in your packet, there is the answers to some of these council questions, but the short of it is, if the tax implications, if it is owned by Bellevue College, yes, there are no taxes paid currently. If it is leased to development that is not otherwise exempt, so, if it's not a nonprofit or anything like that, then those do not get those same exemptions. The city would get the tax dollars from those kind of leases, even though Bellevue College would maintain the ownership. The affordable housing requirements as part of the WSDOT project, the overall development agreement, was to build about 50 homes on parcel D, which is not those 4 parcels, but another parcel D that city owned. Some of that responsibility was on the city to build those 50 homes. However, over time, the city transferred that ownership of parcel D to Westridge to develop 10 homes. In exchange, Westridge Development up in Highlands built 49 affordable units as part of their block development. So we'll get into what's allowed and not allowed. There's a chart later in the presentation that lays it out more clearly. So since that meeting with full council, there are some proposed changes to the resolution based on direction from Mayor Polly and council feedback. What we have proposed here is Bellevue College is required to do community outreach and subsequently can develop the property with institutional uses or mix of residential and institutional uses. However, standalone housing will require another action from City Council after community input is completed and shared with Council. Any proposed development is required to comply with the current stormwater, critical area, and other environmental codes, regardless of institutional use or mixed use or that. So in this table, it kind of lays out what is currently allowed under the development agreement until 2025. What happens if the council approves a 2-year extension as proposed in the resolution in Exhibit B? That's part of your packet. And what happens if the council does not approve it? So I'll go through it one line item by one line item. So the first is institutional use. So it's currently allowed. If council extends this extension or grants this extension, it'll be allowed after public outreach is completed. So they can factor in what type of institutional use and any design standards from Highlands Association and all of that. They are subject to the design standards, as you heard the testimony today. So that comes part of that public outreach. And formal approval when they're ready to develop. If the city council does not approve, then only publicly owned uses, institutional uses can go on, but they can go on until 2040, and they will be built under the development standards that are baked in the development agreement, and not the current stormwater regulations and so on, is what that binding agreement with the Bellevue College that we currently have. Obviously, there's some language we would need to get into and make them comply with the rules to the extent we can. The second line item is really talking about that what is the equivalent of 372,000 square feet in institutional use is about 229 residential units with a maximum density of 3 to 12 units per acre. That particular standalone housing, as it's currently proposed in your resolution, is allowed after public outreach, but only if council has a second chance to say yes or no and address some of the more detailed nuances of that proposal, how much, should be affordable, how much should not be, and things like that will come as a subsequent council discussion when it comes back to you after public outreach. If council does not approve this amendment, then that would not be allowed at all. In the third row here is really talking about any combination of institutional and residential uses, along with accessory uses. They are currently allowed. If you grant them the extension, then they would do the public outreach, obviously, before they can apply for the land use application. But if you don't allow this extension or grant this extension, it would not be allowed. And only publicly owned institutional uses, those necessarily won't be just educational. Those can be any institutional uses that are part of the appendix. So that sort of lays out what the two options are, to approve, not approve, and as recommended. There's a pending motion that was made at your last meeting, which was to approve resolution authorizing the mayor to approve the amendment, extending the expiration date to seek, so that Bellevue College can evaluate development options. And if there is a proposed motion to amend, then there would be a substitute, and I think our city clerk would be happy to assist you as you talk about that conversation after your presentation. But I also want to acknowledge Bellevue President, Dr. May is here, as well as other members from Bellevue College, and they're here to answer your questions, but also talk to you about what their thoughts are. So unless you have questions for me, I can turn it over. Or
It looks like there may be a few.
Okay.
Deputy Council President.
Thank you so much, Minnie. I have 3 questions. So if we don't approve the extension tonight, then is Bellevue College required to do a public outreach process? If
they
we
do
don't-
not, yeah.
Right.
So the process under the development agreement would be when they're ready to do their development, that would go through a development commission approval. There will be a public hearing as part of the actual development of the proposal, but there is not a requirement to seek community input on what uses do you desire, what are your concerns, the people that will have this development in the backyard, what are their concerns, and so on. So those will come in through the permitting process, not prior to, as they're seeking development partners.
And the second question is, if we do not approve this amended extension, does that foreclose the possibility of a hybrid, a mix? In other words, do we completely take housing off the plate if we don't approve this amended extension?
That's correct. So they will, if you don't approve the extension, then, and later council wants to allow something after community outreach or there's more information that makes you reconsider that decision, then it has to go through a process of the whole development agreement amendment or setting up the zoning. It can't just be redone without, the entitlements go away and then you would have to go through a process to rechange whatever that path you
Okay,
choose.
and then my last question is, and I just want clarity here.
Mhm.
Is there any scenario under the amendment that Bellevue College would not have to come back to us for approval of their next steps? Is there any scenario?
Is there any scenario where they would not have to come back? If they were to build in, say, an institutional use, they would do the community outreach. Council doesn't need to formally approve the use at that point because they already have the use approved till 2040. They could then file their land use application, but being a public agency and they want, as they hear community input, they would factor that into whoever they choose as their development partner to do this development with. If there was a mixed-use proposal, that would also, the way we have presented it tonight, that would also be, they would seek the community input, fold that into their proposal, that would still go through a public hearing process, but it won't need touch from council to formally approve that. The standalone housing piece would be the one that would come to council for formal approval before they can proceed with filing permits for that.
Okay, thank you.
Minnie, institutional versus educational, could you explain the difference? What are institutional uses?
Yeah, so in your packet is this question and answer. Let me see if I can pull that up. So the way the development agreement is written, it has a list of uses under the institutional use. And, it's not just Bellevue College. It is, let me see if I can share this. So it could be a community center. It could be a chapel, art gallery, cultural facilities, social services and nonprofit organizations. That could be, the category is pretty broad under that. It could be any of those. And private community organizations, vocational tech, of course, that, religious facilities, government facilities, and of course, educational. Under the accessory uses, it has things that you generally see with these kind of things: libraries, cafeterias, bookstores, theater, recreation facilities, gym, coffee shop, and those.
Thanks for sharing that. You did a great job in the packet, but there's such a discussion on education tonight. I just wanted to make sure that you said out loud what all the other options were. Thank you. I think it's Councilmember Motz, followed by Councilmember Hall.
Can you explain again the used an adjective around housing, freestanding or standalone, or can you explain a little bit more about how the type of housing matters here? Because the chart that you have in here is very good. I'm very appreciative of it, but I'm still a little confused about housing types and potential impact on the decision-making process.
Yeah, I think what we were trying to draw the distinction was if you have a commercial use and an institutional use, and then you have a housing combination, it was one category, but no institutional use and just primarily residential. So just only people living in the facility and not having another use is what I think that we were getting at with the standalone housing.
So it wasn't a certain type, it was just housing
Use
versus
only, yeah.
Thank you.
New word to us. Councilmember Hall.
Thanks. I also have 3 questions, so I hope that's okay. First, apologies for not being here earlier. I did listen to the public comment on YouTube on the drive over, and there was one public commenter, I think it was Dave, who was talking about critical area impacts and how difficult and challenging it would be to develop on the site. I was just wondering if you could speak to kind of the critical area impacts that exist on the property.
Yeah, we know there's wetlands and streams and coal mine hazards. The coal mines up on Highlands were pretty well studied, and so, there's a whole map that sort of establishes that. It doesn't quite impact, but we have to be careful with the geotechnical studies and reports around it. But the appendices in the development agreement actually establish some of those wetlands and the buffers that we have to honor because of this legally binding contract that we have at this time. The only thing that's expiring is the 2 years, but it says the city, without taking any action, has to extend it, the other portions are good till 2040, and publicly owned institutional use.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, important to note. Well, actually, my I'll take this a little out of order. I want to ask a hypothetical question. So if council decides not to extend the provision of the DA, if the school district isn't particularly interested in acquiring new property, if Bellevue College makes the internal decision and decides it's not financially feasible to build an institutional use on the site, there's a public surplusing process, right? Can you describe to us what that process is like and what are the kinds of things that could end up there if it went on surplus?
It will have to follow the policies of Bellevue College Board for surplusing. It will be their decision.
And I am going to invite Dr. Mayap and his team, give them an opportunity to speak, so think about that question rather than have many guests.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate it. It's always good to have the appropriate person asking. So yeah, it'd be great to hear a little bit about that. And then I'm also interested in exploring with council the word standalone and potentially considering an amendment to remove the word standalone, so that way both options that include housing would have to come back to the council for final approval. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that as well. Yeah, and if you have any thoughts too as the administration, it would be helpful to hear that as well.
Yeah, I think our recommendation was to only have council touch at the point where it's only residential but not mixed use. But if council wants to, have another say in even for mixed use, then that would be the amendment you would make.
And that would be a proposed change, but something we can talk about tonight. Any other questions? Councilmember Ray? Oh, sorry. Councilmember Zhang, Councilmember Ray.
So is it possible to amend this development agreement to allow institutional use only and also amend it to require community input?
Well, if I think what you're asking is, the language in the development agreement is pretty broad. It just says the city shall allow institutional uses without any action till 2040, publicly owned institutional uses. So if you want public outreach for institutional uses, but not allow any mixed use or anything else, then technically, Bellevue College could say, but they've been good partners so far, and, if that's something that council is interested in, I'd let them weigh in. However, there isn't anything that requires them to do it as the contract is currently written.
Were you trying to find out how to get community input on institutional only?
I'm asking if that is a possibility, is something we could amend the contract to say. Like, could we amend the contract to say that?
It's a development agreement.
Oh, sorry,
so
development
it's a give
agreement.
and a get.
Good evening, Rachel Turpin, City Attorney. You could, but you'd have to have Bellevue College's agreement to do so, and they don't. Right now, they can, even if the council takes no action tonight, they can develop any public institutional use without public outreach till 2040. So you could ask, but they could say no, and they could still move forward.
Understood. And then if we don't extend that provision of the development agreement, but then in the future, through public input, we decide that, it becomes clear that the best and highest use to the community includes some component of housing, how would that development agreement amendment process be different than what we're doing right now?
Well, I think that it's expired, so it's not just an extension. If it's already expired, then you start a new development agreement process. We'll have to look at the terms of the development agreement, but it's not just, you can't really take an old development agreement many years later and then try and change it. Once it expires, then it expires.
Okay. Do you want to reframe that? Because it looks like you still didn't get the answer you wanted.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying, like, how... I guess my question is, like, how much work is it to, start a new development agreement versus, do this extension like we're doing now?
Significant. significant.
And if I may, Madam Mayor, members of the council, it takes both parties' concurrence. Again, there are vested rights that Bellevue College has. They would have to come to the table and be willing to amend those vested rights through a new agreement. The city attorney, I think, is still here. Is that a fair estimate of this?
I haven't looked at this a lot, but I was actually anticipating this question and looking at this section of the contract this evening.
Development agreement.
The development agreement. It's a contract. It's still a contract.
It is a contract.
And it's a really oddly worded term provision in a development agreement. It's not one I've ever seen before. And it does, on one hand, somewhat imply that the development agreement just sort of ends at the end of this year unless the city agrees without additional action, which makes really not a lot of sense in practice, to extend the term until December 31st, 2040 in order to facilitate the build out of publicly owned institutional use. So I do think there is an argument to be made that you could amend it after this year to add something. However, based on the age of the agreement and the complexities of it, I think it would be my recommendation that at that point you just start over.
Better? Or do you want to take a third shot?
I'll think about if I have additional clarifying questions.
Council President. Oh, Councilmember Ray, Council President.
So my question's really, one of them is sort of a formatting question, and then I have a substantive question. But when I look at the table that is included in the PowerPoint, and you've got the three options, and then is the text that's in red, is that what has been negotiated with Bellevue College for inclusion in the extension? So that's negotiated terms and conditions.
That is correct.
Okay.
And that is a change from when you last saw it as council. So we wanted to highlight what has changed.
Right, but this wasn't something we just said, oh, this is what we're going to do. This is something we negotiated with Bellevue College.
Correct.
I think that's a really important point. So this may be a question more for Bellevue College than it is for you, Director Dollywall, but it goes to the last one where it's mixed use, and it doesn't have the council approval. What's the rationale for that consideration as opposed to all residential consideration?
I think that was getting at some of the feedback we heard from council about housing in a master plan community, how much, and should there be a balance of things. So the idea being if it is part of another mixed use, then it got its own category or whole line. We understood the concern to be just only housing. Council needed some more surety around that.
And it does sound like many council members are interested in talking about whether or not it's all housing, but even if it's some housing. So it's a valid concern.
Exactly, and then so maybe our friends from Bellevue College can speak to their thinking about that.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Ray. And again, we have Minnie's not leaving, so this is not your last opportunity for staff questions. But we'll go to Council President, and then if it's okay with the group, we'll invite Bellevue College to come up and do a presentation. Council President.
Thank you. I'm going to take another stab on Councilmember Jang's question. So in the future, if we didn't approve this extension, but found through community engagement that mixed use or something similar was the highest and best use for that property, could we move forward with a more traditional way of adjusting the zoning of that property, such as a comp plan amendment, in order to facilitate and enable that type of use? Or would there be requirements considering there would be a continuing development agreement?
Sure, we can always, start the comprehensive planning process and the zoning establishment for the property. The issue is that contract itself doesn't sunset until 2040 because it says without city action, that still remains. So you could give it an underlying zoning and this would stay as on top of that. But if it is Bellevue College, they would still have legal contract that's binding to the city to allow an publicly owned institutional use till 2040 based on the development standards in that agreement.
Yes, and if that was something that through community engagement, we came up with a plan that was beneficial to the community and to the college and to the city, we could still find a way to do it that wouldn't necessarily require this entire recreation of a development agreement.
Yeah, but creating a comprehensive plan is still, resource intensive in terms of the comparison, what's the rules, what makes sense and all of that. Yeah.
But we wouldn't have to create new standards that apply just for that property to stormwater and, all of those things in order to change the zoning.
Sure, but the Bellevue College would have to voluntarily give up their entitlements. If we were talking to a developer, it would be a very different conversation. I mean, it's a public agency that is willing partner and wants to do it right and have the community outreach and conversation. So I think this partnership between two public agencies is the part that I think is also sort of important here to keep in mind as you contemplate this issue.
Okay, and then another question. Is there a way when looking at these kind of three options to require collaboration or engagement with the Issaquah Highlands Community Association, IHCA?
Absolutely. And, when we first started back in February, these conversations, we did have Bellevue College reach out to Issaquah Highlands Community Association. I think there were some phone calls back in the day. But obviously, we want everyone to be at the table. We want to hear from them. They know their community the best. So that's definitely a part that we want to facilitate, help improve.
Okay, I want to be very clear on that. Is that required or just suggested?
Well, as part of the community outreach process, so I gave you a little sample of what that would look like. It would be to the development partners, to the Highlands Council, to the community members that live there. So, and then, that could happen through meetings, charrettes, or surveys. So there's a whole tool. We work with the communications team to come up with, based on city's public outreach tool, to what that public outreach should look like. So yes, there would be definitely a seat at the table for IHCA from the get-go, for sure.
Okay.
So thank you, Minnie. Don't go far.
Yeah.
So at this time, I would like to invite Dr. May, Bellevue College's president, and any of your team to come up. And we did hear some public comment this evening that I would like you to include in your presentation, and you might have to do it off the top of your head. But out on social media and in testimony or public comments we heard tonight, the intended message that most of the community has about this process is that Bellevue College wants to maximize profit to deal with its state funding cuts. And I think it's very important that you talk about that, even if it isn't part of your presentation. Come on up, Dr. May.
Mayor Pauly, members of the council, thank you very much for a few minutes of your time today. And thank you also for those of you who carved out some time this summer and we were able to get together and have some good conversations around these issues. I do want to introduce Dr. Jorge De La Torre, who's the Vice President for Administrative Services, and Dr. Lori Keller, who is the Director of Policy and Governmental Relations at Bellevue College. I think they would prefer to not stand up right now, but I may turn to them when I lose track or lose the thread.
Doctor, if you're going to have them come up, just have them, to answer questions, still have them introduce themselves at the mic would be great.
Thank you. I just have to say it's great to see Bellevue College or Bellevue Community College alumni. And I think in this moment, it is a representative of the connection that Bellevue College has with the city of Issaquah. In the last 5 years, there have been 14,500-ish students come to Bellevue College from Issaquah, and more than 4,000 credentials. And if you don't know about community colleges, those are local students who then stay local. And so there is a deep connection, and there has been a long-standing partnership. The amendments, there's been a lot of discussion about the amendments. We're very pleased with the amendments. Speaking to the environmental codes, we have a deep commitment to environmental responsibility. Our environmental plan is out there, and it's a plan to be carbon neutral in the future. Not for a while, but we're working toward it every day. Sorry, I have notes on my notes, so and my handwriting is terrible anyway.
And we have all night, so take your time.
I'll skip that. To your point, Mayor Pauley, there has been created a very loud public narrative that the college is interested only in profit maximization, and that the only thing that we have considered is the 220 plus standalone single residential housing. And I think that came in part from the report from the Emerald Initiative. We engaged with the Emerald Initiative. So this isn't a conversation that actually started in February. When I arrived at Bellevue College 2.5 years ago, I said, what, we own property? And then I had a very interesting phone call with you, Mayor Pauley, about that property and some things that had happened there, some negative outcomes. So this has been on my mind, and this has been part of my conversation. And so we engaged with the Emerald Initiative in an effort to understand what was possible there, because it's a sloped property, it has wetlands at the bottom. No one's ever really sat down and said, can we build something here? And if so, what could that something be? And so that was where this conversation began. Now, the Emerald Initiative is connected to a lot of development. And so their bent is to find ways to do what this narrative has become, maximize profits. But that's not what I'm here to commit to today. We're dealing with our state budget issues. We're doing that right now. We had our Board of Trustees meeting last week, and we're dealing with it. So this conversation is not about a budget reduction from the state in the last legislative session. This is about hoping to find a way to utilize this property in a manner which is beneficial for the city, for the residents of the city, and also for Bellevue College. And so that's the goal of the conversation if this extension is granted. If this extension isn't granted and we're not required to do public outreach, we will still do public outreach. The goal isn't to try to steamroll, ride roughshod, whatever phrase you want to use. The goal really is to find something that we can continue to be partners with the City of Bellevue. Sorry, I say City of Bellevue so often in my day-to-day life. The City of Issaquah, and move this property forward. And if it's the will of the council to seek to amend this agreement to require us to come back for mixed use, I promise I won't have any issue with that. We will be happy to come back and have additional conversations on mixed use, because I understand that concern. Then there was a question, might have been Councilmember Hall, asked about surplus.
Surplusing.
So the state has a process because we are a state agency. And so we can't just simply decide that we're going to sell this property to anyone. The state has a process that we have to go through. And it's multi-stage. I'll just read this list here so I don't mess it up. So we have to issue a formal surplus declaration saying that we no longer wish to control this property and we have no intent to utilize it. We notify the Department of Enterprise Services, DES, our friends, and DES initiates a screening period for state and public use. So they basically say, is there another state agency that wants to use it? Is there another public agency that wants to purchase it? Of course, we know that affordable housing is given priority in that process under the RCW. And then if no interest is expressed from any state or public agency, then the state board could sell the property at market value. And so that's the process that we would go through. If that came to that final determination and the property was sold, the money doesn't come to Bellevue College. So we're not actually talking about this as, you know, trying to balance the budget by even selling the property. It's just not the way the state system works. I think that's most of the indecipherable scribblings that I have on my notes.
And I'm going to get you to stay up there then.
I'll stay up here.
Yeah, and thank you for working with my team over the last couple of years on this. Thanks very much.
No, I neglected to thank the folks in the mayor's office, as well as the city council members who I've met with. They've been incredibly helpful, incredibly generous with their time and with their thoughts, and it's really been a pleasure to continue to build relationships and partnerships.
Thank you, Dr. May. Council members, questions for Bellevue College? We'll start with Councilmember Zhang.
So the first paragraph of text in the consultant report says, and I'm reading verbatim, the college has shared that its primary goal for the site is to maximize revenue generation with secondary goals of building community partnerships and/or driving learning outcomes. And you're saying that that is not true, so I'm curious why that was in the consultant report if that was not true.
It's not true that that is my highest goal. I don't know why the consultants wrote that in there. I mean, so we're a public agency. I'm not looking to lose money on a development agreement with a developer, but maximizing profit is not my goal. I'm on the public record. The president of Bellevue College is saying that.
Okay. Next question, council members? Okay, and we will still have the Bellevue College team here during the council conversation in case another question comes up. Thank you very much, Dr. May.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So city clerk, even for me doing this for 14 years, this next step is a little confusing. I wonder if you would walk us through the motions that could happen tonight so that those in the audience, their brains don't blow up as we start having that conversation on the dais.
Sure. So at the July 21st City Council meeting, a motion to approve a resolution number 2025-15, which would extend the development agreement, was moved and seconded, and then it was referred to a committee of the whole and eventually landed us on tonight. So that motion is pending. And so the administration's suggestion tonight, as you know, Minnie provided a revised resolution in the agenda packet. And so the motion in the packet is to replace that pending resolution with the revised version that includes the additional community engagement. So you would make one vote to replace the resolution, and then the second vote would be whether to approve or fail the revised resolution. We've heard there might be an additional amendment desired to remove the word standalone from Exhibit A, and that could be achieved through that motion to substitute. You could say move to substitute the pending resolution with the revised version dated November 10th and removing the word standalone from Exhibit A. You could do that all together, or you could do one at a time. Move and vote on the revised version and then have someone move any additional amendments.
Thank you. And I wondered, just in case everybody doesn't have a packet of the information, if you could read what the substitute motion is, and then we'll start moving through these council actions.
Mayor, do you mean that motion to substitute the pending resolution?
Actually, no, but I think it's fine. Let's start with the first one. First motion on the table is to substitute the pending, the first motion that you may consider, if you'd like to, we'd need someone to move it and second it, is to substitute the pending resolution with the revised version dated November 10th. Do we have somebody who wants to make a motion? Deputy Council
So
President?
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. It is moved in its original form. Would someone care to make an amendment to that motion? Are we allowed to do that now?
I would recommend taking
Separated?
a vote on
Okay.
this revised version first.
Okay. So it has been moved and seconded to substitute the pending resolution with the revised version dated November 10th, 2025. Is there council discussion? Deputy Council President, you have your mic on. Would you like to speak?
Sorry.
No.
Well, just to, I guess I'll do it. Yeah, just to say that if we're going to vote on any motion tonight, it might as well be the most current one. So I would suggest that everyone on the council support this amendment. Thanks.
Any other council discussion? Not seeing any indication. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously, 7 and City Clerk, now do we move to the main motion or the amendment that some council members are considering?
So you now have that revised resolution pending, and so any additional amendments could be made at this time.
Councilmember Zhang, would you like to talk about the amendment you were proposing? Or Council President?
So I would amend the substitute motion to remove the word standalone from Exhibit A.
Is there a second?
Second.
And council discussion? Council President?
I appreciate Bellevue College and President May coming and making these comments and suggesting that even a mixed-use development would require council feedback and approval. And so I think that is the latest motion for us to discuss.
So it's moved and seconded to remove the words, I forgot, what's it called? Standalone from the other motion. If there's no more council discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries unanimously, 7-0. And on to the next step.
Right, which is the final vote on the amended resolution.
I'm seeing two. Are these questions, or would someone like to make a motion first? Oh, sorry. We have a motion that's been amended. So we're calling for a vote on the...
It's an opportunity for discussion and any other future amendments, and then you'll just take the vote on the resolution.
Thanks. Council President, followed by Councilmember Martz.
Thank you. So council has known about this for a little while, albeit not as long as the development agreement has necessarily been going on has this discussion happened, but we have been having conversations with Bellevue College since that kind of June period. I've heard a lot from the community about this and about the desired potential uses for this large of a property. And I think as I am thinking through this, I would say first and foremost, I'm not opposed to housing even in this location. But there are some very specifics about this parcel that are really important for us to consider. It is not often that we have a 19-acre site in the city that is located right next to a school and a city-owned park that is adjacent to areas where there are sports fields, and that has a community that very much supports an institutional use on this property. So I think those are the first things that come to mind. The second thing that really is important for me in considering this is the intended use and the significant discount that was given to Bellevue College to purchase this property, along with a lot of community benefits in order to have a public benefit on this site. And I think that's an important piece that we need to consider as we are thinking through all of the options here. So I am not necessarily in favor of extending this development agreement. I think there are certain adjustments that have come through this staff negotiation that could make it a little bit more feasible. But I think the public benefit portion and the exploration of institutional use, and particularly a potential school site, and talking really truly getting a conversation happening with the Issaquah School District is really important at this point, and it's something that the community supports, and it's something that we don't get often. One of the reasons that the school district pursued the property that they did was because they wanted a single property owner and a large enough site. And so I think these are very important things that we really need to consider as we are looking through this. I am not sure that extending the development agreement helps us potentially achieve that or create that portion of a community conversation. I think that's going to take Issaquah City staff leadership and our ownership of the process. I think there is a conflict of interest in having the community conversation if there is a potential school use that would not maximize profit on this site by having the community conversation owned by Bellevue College. Once that's out of the way, I think creating that community conversation with Bellevue's college ownership is fantastic. But I do think we really need to understand our role in stewarding through possibilities and not shutting the door on certain possibilities. So that's where I am sitting now. I would love to hear from other council members.
Councilmember Mertz?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am against extending the development agreement this evening. Development agreements, first of all, I love development agreements. They are some of the most aspirational things that we do as a city council. We offer a heck of a deal to who we partner with. We basically enshrine zoning policy. We give developers certainty in return for a benefit for our community, right? And some of the pillars of our city have been built through development agreements. Issaquah Highlands, Talus, the Rowley developments that have occurred, Costco, the amazing things Costco has done, the amazing things Swedish has done. I was here on this council, at this podium in 2010, when we made the development agreement with Bellevue College, and it has had a heartbreaking neglect for the last 15 years. Nothing has happened other than residential housing being put in place. And, you know, they did a study 3 years ago. They've known for a while that the clock was coming up, and now in November, we're supposed to rush into a decision? No. This public outreach process and community engagement doesn't guarantee anyone anything. I think at this point we just need to revert to the default zoning. Director Dhaliwal, I really appreciate the institutional uses list. I think it's a good list. I think everything on that list is things that they're all things that we would be proud of to have in the Highlands. So respectfully, I love Bellevue College. I'm glad that they're there, but you've had 15 years to develop this property. Time's up. So I'm a no. Thank you.
Councilmember Hall. Oh, sorry, Deputy Council President, and then Councilmember Hall.
I'm having trouble with my button tonight. There we go. So, well, it's time for a counter voice, so I will provide that. I am supporting the extension and the amendment and the extension of the development. And I think that the amendments that we've seen and the guarantee that they will be coming back to us for approval of a plan makes a lot of sense to me. By approving the extension, we're giving everyone the opportunity to take a deep breath and consider the near and long-term impacts of any plan that Bellevue College proposes. As taxpayers, we don't construct institutional buildings just because we think it's a good idea. We construct institutional buildings because there's a demonstrated need, and that applies to anything that Bellevue College might do. It also applies to anything that the school district might be interested in. We have to have a demonstrated need. We have to understand the short and long-term impacts on the environment, on the slopes, on transportation and traffic, on the neighborhoods, on public safety and evacuation routes. All of these have been raised by emails that we've received from the public, and most importantly on student education. And that's just to name a few of the considerations that need to be taken into consideration. So we're nowhere close to understanding exactly what this property could be. A 2-year extension, which requires consideration of both the institutional and the housing development needs, also provides us with the opportunity to know who is interested in the Bellevue College plan and who is not. To those folks who are interested in having a high school up on that property, you have to understand and understand that there is no guarantee that the school district has an interest in that property. And if they do have an interest in the property, there's no guarantee that they will be able to fund the development of that property. That would be a long and complicated process. And we just heard what the process for surplusing the property would be. That would be another one that would be completely out of our control and completely out of the control of the school district as well. So there's a lot of, in Rumsfeld's famous formulation of known unknowns and unknown unknowns that just have to be identified through some kind of process. And I believe that the extension, the 2-year extension, gives us that opportunity for that process. If the council doesn't approve the extension tonight, then Bellevue College is not under an obligation to do a public outreach, although I know that you would, but you're not under any obligation to do that. With the agreement, we would be able to work in partnership on that outreach. If we don't pass it, it also puts Bellevue College in a kind of a bad position. The original intent of the agreement was a satellite campus, and that was 15 years ago. And 15 years ago, satellite campuses were very popular. And we've seen with the closure of Central Washington University up on the plateau that satellite campuses simply aren't working anymore. So what can we do? If we don't pass the extension tonight, we've completely foreclosed the opportunity for a mixed-use development, which I think has a lot of possibilities, and that would be with an educational institution and then some kind of housing. There's a lot of possibly creative ideas out there about that. We foreclosed that. We foreclosed the public outreach. We're talking about 2 years. That's the length of the extension. So I know that if we were to approve the extension tonight, that Bellevue College would have a tremendous amount of work to do in 2 years to understand what the community needs, to hear all kinds of creative and maybe not so creative ideas about what could be there. But I think that through a community process, listening to the community, doing a lot more research on the developability of that land, I really appreciate Mr. Kapler's comments tonight because when you look at it, there are some slopes there, there's valleys, there's all kinds of things that needs to be taken into consideration environmentally when you look at that property and see how much of it actually is developable. So I think a 2-year extension gives us the opportunity to work together to find a really good solution for that property and to determine what really is viable there. So I will be voting to support, and I keep messing this up, the amendment to the agreement.
I don't know.
No?
I don't know.
The amendment to the extension. Yes, there we go. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe it's Councilmember Hall, followed by Councilmember Ray.
Yeah, thank you. Ditto to what the Deputy Council President said. I also support approving the 2-year extension now as amended in particular. And I think voting no would be a mistake. So let's walk through some of my thoughts here. I think first and foremost, I actually want to thank Bellevue College for being a willing and good partner here in this space. First, with previous investments and community benefit already on the property, with commitment to many current rules and regulations for future development, with commitment to community input, and now council approval on both options that would include housing. With all that, I think we've struck a really good balance here that does address much of the community and council concern that I've heard tonight and in emails for the last few days that we've been receiving from community. Like I said at our previous meeting, Bellevue College is a critically important partner to the city of Issaquah, to our community, and provides tremendous community benefit not only to post-secondary students, but also secondary students here in the city of Issaquah and the broader area. And this represents an opportunity to give them a bit of time, recognizing they've had challenges just like any other public institution, just like us. I see a lot of similarities here, and this is an opportunity to help, and I don't see why we wouldn't. And it also allows them to do that planning and then figure out how best to utilize the property for them, for community, for the city. Especially now in its current form, it doesn't prevent collaboration with the school district, and especially if their future interest in the site shifts. And it doesn't prevent some form of institutional use from the college themselves as well. Now it requires council approval for housing too, which means we have another touch in the future where we can incorporate community concerns and an opportunity to hear from community. I worry about what happens if council doesn't support the motion tonight, though. I agree the institutional use list is a good list, it is. But we're hearing that the feasibility for those options just isn't there, especially right now. So that means surplusing, and from what we've heard today, there's a lot of uncertainty in the surplusing process. And then we have community and city has no say whatsoever at that point. So with this amended motion, community has say. We have another touch in the future by relying on what could likely be an eventual surplusing process. We lose that, there's uncertainties, and it means no benefit for the community, for the college, for the city. So in my mind, this is a pretty easy vote, especially because we have a future opportunity to collect community engagement and giving Bellevue College some more time to put in some really thoughtful exercise into this. So I'll be voting yes, thanks.
Councilmember Ray, you no longer have, okay, there you go. You didn't leave it up, so I didn't know if you changed your mind. Councilmember Ray.
Not be annoying.
Okay.
First, I want to thank Bellevue College leadership for being here tonight. It is so important and gratifying to hear from you all. I concur with Councilmember Hall that the proposed extension addresses the issues that have been raised by the community. There were some, as I was reading through the extension and reading through all of my emails, there were a number of things that made me pause, but I think we've done a good job of addressing that. And I don't think we're rushing into a decision. I really think we're doing just the opposite. We're not giving up control. What we're doing is moving forward with more flexibility in how we address this parcel of land. And I've heard about uncertainty, and really the extension provides us a foundation for more time to examine and better gain that certainty, to the Deputy Council President's Rumsfeld reference, because there are a lot of unknowns, and we can develop those and have a better sense of them. Large parcels in Issaquah are hard to come by. We really need to figure out how to explore what's the best way to use this land. I don't think a 2-year extension, doesn't limit us. It actually just provides us an opportunity for more control and an opportunity for engagement. It gives us more control over the development. We have a better ability to, if we see fit, to push towards a community good. And, it's really about listening to the community and not closing any doors at this time, because we don't really have to. So let's leave the doors open and find out what the community really wants us to do with this parcel of land, and then find a way to move forward on that.
We have 2 council members we haven't heard from, Councilmember Zhang, and then we'll leave it up to Councilmember Joe if he has comments.
Great. Yeah, I also want to give thanks for the Bellevue College staff for being here with us today. I think we've heard quite a lot of community input over the last few days, that, they want to ensure the long-promised institutional use at the site. I've also heard from some folks that, we shouldn't build anything there unless we also improve transportation infrastructure, like put in a new road. That is a strong case to me that we should actually potentially consider a new development agreement that includes infrastructure improvements. But whether it's, high school, elementary school, community center, middle school, pool, library, whatever, all those lists on the list of institutional uses, I think those would all be great. I think the residents of the Issaquah Highlands deserve for this land to become something that provides a public benefit. It's what they've been promised for over a decade. We've seen in multiple other development agreements, some of the things that were supposed to be public benefits ended up not panning out, and we just got more housing, which is great because people need to live somewhere. But given that there's this 19-acre parcel that has been zoned and intended for institutional use for, the last 15 years, I think that's something that we shouldn't give up lightly. I also want to note that we really received an exceptional amount of public feedback from a community we do not hear from very often, and that is our Chinese community in the Issaquah Highlands. Typically, Chinese Americans are not politically active and engaged, but they really care about their children's education, and I think that's why that kind of rose to the level of salience that it did amongst that community. And as we continue to grow and diversify as a city, I think we should really, take care and respond to the needs and desires of our increasingly diverse community. I'm also very sympathetic to Bellevue College's budget situation. We're facing similar challenges here in Issaquah, but I think ultimately, it is a state funding challenge. I'm more than happy to go to the state legislature and say you need to be funding higher education more, and I'm happy to work with you on that. But I think that's kind of a separate issue from what we're discussing on this parcel, which is maximizing the public benefit to the city of Issaquah. And I think I do want to commend Bellevue College for their partnership on this, but I do think, I think ultimately the path forward is going to have to be some kind of institutional use, and there's going to have to be a community conversation about what that is. And regardless of, whether we adopt this amendment or not, there isn't really any teeth for the public outreach for publicly owned institutional uses, so that essentially is the same whether we amend this or not. I think it's more so just a question of, whether we approve this extension of the provision to allow housing to be built with public input and outreach, and then bring it back to us, which again, I think just given everything that's happened in the Highlands over the last 15 years with the shelter development agreement, where there's going to be 1,200 new homes built in the Highlands, Lakeside Development Agreement just down the street, another 1,000 homes. I don't really see how not adding some kind of institutional use could be the best and highest use of this land, just given everything else that we have planned around there. And, one of the reasons why cities, one of the key functions of cities is land use, is managing land use. And so for us to kind of, essentially we're just kicking the can down the road in, within the next 2 years, we can decide on a specific proposal or what have you. But ultimately, I will be voting no on this proposal. I do think the original intent of this, land sale to Bellevue College was for publicly owned institutional use. I think we need to honor the intent of the original sale and maintain that this land needs to be used for institutional use moving forward, and it needs to, and as we develop that, we need to engage with all the community stakeholders, whether it be, IHCA, Highlands Council, residents of the Highlands, and also do more than what's just, in the public engagement plan, receiving a postcard in the mail or, having one public meeting. I think we can do better than that in terms of public outreach.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank Bellevue College for being an active partner during this process and being quite open and transparent about what they would like to see with the property as we go forward. When we first put this together as a city, there was a different vision for the Highlands that has changed over time, and in general, I'm going to support the amendment to the extension. It does address the community concerns. It keeps our options open, which I think is probably the most important thing. For closing options, as we've seen in other communities, just ends up with property that does not get developed. The property just remains an eyesore and a potential for homeless camps or other issues along the way. This agreement, if it's approved tonight, does give us an opportunity to protect the environmental beauty there, along with developing it in a thoughtful way. The danger, as Councilmember Hall points out, is that not approving the agreement puts us on a road to potentially have the surplus property process get involved. At that point, we do lose control over what might happen there, and it just depends on which state agency or agencies wants to develop that property, and what kind of use can come in there is not really something that we have a big say in going forward. So I believe the amendment to the extension gives us opportunities to have that community conversation, stay active as a city in that conversation, and try to work to find solutions that are going to make sense for the institution of Bellevue College, make sense from an economic point of view, to put in pieces that make sense for the Issaquah Highlands in the future. Gives the citizens an opportunity to discuss that, and the citizens that live closest to it in the Highlands an opportunity to have some say in the future as it goes forward. So I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Council President?
Thank you. And this may be a question for Director Dhaliwal. If we, several of the council members have talked about foreclosing options and things like that. If this property went to surplus or there was a buyer, what would be the land use and zoning that they would be able to develop out of that? Because we've talked a lot about the potential for affordable housing because that's what the state uses land for, but we ultimately control land use and zoning. So what are the possibilities there?
Yeah, the situation we have with all the areas that are under the development agreement, there really isn't an underlying zoning. It's the DA terms that determine what's allowed and what standards apply. So in this case, even though numerically it might say, you know, U Village or whatever is the zoning, it really sends you back to the development agreement terms for form and intensity, for the permitted uses and all that. So somewhere we want to get to is to have an underlying zoning for these DAs so that when the development agreement sunset, that the development agreement acts like an overlay over the underlying zoning, but that's not what we have currently. I don't know if that answers your question. So yes, the ultimate decision with the surplus would lie with the legislative body at the time.
Yeah. So if this went to surplus, it would be very difficult, I would imagine, to sell unless we created a set of zoning for the property that would give anyone who is developing this outside of the development agreement.
Yes, sometimes there are federal and state preemptions for certain type of facilities that don't have to abide by the local regulations. A lot of those places don't like to use those preemptions. They want to work with the local agencies, but there are some uses that sometimes can overrule the local rules for federal and state type of uses.
I'm not sure I understand how to interpret those comments.
Well, I guess if we would have to go through a surplus if they go through a surplus process, the selection through that would go through their normal process. They would come to the city to say, this is what we want to do. And if we have our zoning in place at that time, then we would review it under the zoning in place. If they come in and say, because we are a state agency or a federal agency and we have these preemptions that we don't need to meet the local rules, that can sometimes happen with publicly proposed uses that are necessary, but
Could you give us like an example? Could that be a crisis care center? Could that be affordable housing?
Not, you know, those generally wouldn't fall,
wouldn't trigger
but
it.
like a federal agency, you know, what comes to mind is like railroads, for instance. I mean, that's not an actual use here, but if they had a need for a facility, they don't really need to comply with city's rules. They may, and I'm not, you know, there are state law things that we would have to look through. I'm looking.
I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there are, Minnie is correct that there are some federal laws that allow certain facilities to be built without regard to local zoning, but it's not common.
Okay. Any additional comments? Councilmember Zhang, Councilmember Hall.
Can I propose another amendment? Okay. I would like to amend the amended amendment to say, to remove the for housing in addition to the word standalone to say thereafter no land use application can be filed unless specifically approved by the city council. Because currently my understanding is that if there's publicly owned institutional use, that doesn't have to be approved by council. So this kind of just makes all of those uses on an even playing field.
Can you explain that a little more?
So previously, I believe we had approved the amendment to remove the word standalone. So it said, during this extension period, the college may continue to evaluate additional development scenarios and potential uses consistent with the community-informed plan for a mix of uses with no land use application to be filed until the public outreach is complete, and thereafter no land use application for housing can be filed unless specifically approved by the city council. So I'm proposing to amend it to thereafter no land use application can be filed unless specifically approved by the city council to extend the city council approval to publicly owned institutional use as well.
So inserting the council into all decision-making. And we're probably going to have to get some feedback on that before, like, let's have somebody second it so that we can discuss it.
Second.
So this is a major change, and I'm not sure either how the city or how Bellevue College feels about putting the city in and creating the land use process for even the institutional use. It's a taking without a giving. I mean, that's part of the development agreement process, and this is going back to just converting a development agreement to just a regular process. That's a big question. Maybe we take a 5-minute break and we regroup and let them talk about it, because that basically just turns it into a regular process.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Yeah, oh, there we go. Thanks. So we are back from our break. And Councilmember Zhang, could you repeat your proposal, and then I'm going to have Dr. May come up and address.
Okay, so my proposal was to amend the amendment to say thereafter no land use application can be filed unless specifically approved by the city council, whereas previously it said thereafter no land use application for housing can be filed unless specifically approved by the city council.
Thank you. Dr. May, can you talk to that, please?
Yeah, we had a few moments to talk. Thank you for the recess and the opportunity to do that. The answer is that it doesn't feel like it's a land use agreement then. It feels like it's a normal city process where everything is coming back to the council. If we were to desire to move forward with an institutional use, public institutional use, the city still has another opportunity, just not the city council. The city still has the opportunity to review that land use application. And so the short answer is the college is not going to be willing to agree to that at this point. What we would be very friendly toward is an amendment that required the same kind of community outreach and engagement for institutional use proposals as for the other two types of proposals.
Okay, so council, thank you, Dr. May. Council, it's been moved and seconded to make the Councilmember Zhang amendment to the amendment. Discussion. Council President?
Yeah, I mean, I seconded this so that we could have conversation. I think I probably won't be supporting this because I don't think there is a viable way to change our development agreement at this time for institutional use, but I would be interested in having conversations about any public outreach.
Councilmember Zhang?
Yeah, I mostly proposed this just to discuss it. And so I think, given the feedback from Bellevue College, I think, adopting a similar public outreach plan or public outreach requirements and actually having that within the development agreement amendment is something that I would be open to.
If you'd like to withdraw your original motion, you may propose what you just made as a additional motion.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. If you want to not have the vote on the amendment, you can just say you would like to withdraw it.
Okay. I would like to withdraw my amendment.
And you may propose a new amendment, very similar to what you just said, is that a community engagement process be included for even only a institutional
Okay,
use.
and I would like to propose that a community engagement process be included for institutional use.
Okay. Is that clear enough, City Clerk?
I think that's already covered, Mayor Polly. In the attachment to the resolution, the Exhibit A already has that expectation.
Okay.
That during this extension period, college may continue to evaluate additional development scenarios and potential uses consistent with the community-informed plan for a mix of uses with no land use application filed until the public outreach is complete. And so I think that sort of implies that there would be public outreach regardless
For
of what
institutional.
option they choose, because, yeah, so there's no question that there won't be any community outreach for one use versus the other.
Okay, thank you. And can I ask a question? Are there any contractual obligations as to what the community outreach needs to include?
I've included a sample community outreach piece, but I'm sure, we'll work in partnership with Bellevue College and Council and share a draft once we finalize what that looks like. We will ensure that, it's not just Bellevue College-led. The city and IHCA and other agents, interested folks are informed as we finalize the plan for community outreach.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other amendments? So the main motion, which also uses the word amendment, is, it has been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2025-15, authorizing the mayor to, am I reading the right one? Mayor to approve an amendment to the WSDOT TDR development agreement extending the expiration date to allow Bellevue College to evaluate development options and seek community input as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Can you raise your hands so I get, thank you. All those opposed?
No.
Nay.
Councilmember Zhang, that was a nay, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, okay. So that passes 4-3, and I would like to thank you for staying to this late hour with us, but we have additional business to do, which do not feel like you are obligated to stay with us. But thank you for coming tonight. The next item on our regular business agenda tonight is AB 8968, the 2026 school impact fees. And the action before council is to adopt the ordinance. I'd like to invite Planning Manager Kristen Leeson to present this item. And Kristen, I believe, is joining us online.
I am. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I don't have a presentation. I am going to briefly state that based on the 2025 to 2031 capital improvement plan from the Issaquah School District, based on the information provided, they are not going to require impact fees from future developments in the year 2026. So when developments come through, there will be no impact fees paid to the school district. And if you all have any more questions regarding that, then I am asking that you please refer to the letter that was submitted to you in the agenda bill by the Issaquah School District.
And Kristen, I would like to get you to expand on that a little bit. So as the central Issaquah area develops and applications come in, they are subject only to pay the fees that are in place at the time of their application submission, not the completion of their project.
That is correct. When they pay impact fees when their building permits are submitted, that is when we collect those.
And the actual completion and occupation of those projects could be 2 to 3 years.
Correct.
So in terms of school population, the school is not going to see an impact till 2 to 3 years after the impact fees are not collected.
Correct.
Okay, and I think that is the only clarification we were trying to provide tonight. Not that there's any recommendation not to go with the original motion that is there, but just a recognition for council to understand that this needs to be revisited not just when the school populations go up, but also during the time period that allows for the city to collect those fees on behalf of new development. That gap in when you collect and when the students show up in school was not discussed in the original presentation.
And Madam Mayor, if I may I clarify?
Yep.
I believe I said that we collect those when they are submitted, where they're actually collected, they're assessed. We figure out what they are when they're submitted, yet we don't collect those fees
Correct.
until the permits are actually issued. So yes, it is a long
So they are
period.
told what the fees are at a certain point in time, and there may be a year or two lag until they get their building permits, and that's when they pay. But if the city,
Correct.
if the school district changes and starts to collect 1, 2, 3, 4 years later, they do not have to pay.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Does council have any questions? Not seeing any. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt ordinance number
3121.
amending subsection 3.63.100 paren A of the Issaquah Municipal Code to revise the amount of the school impact fee imposed by the city.
Second?
Second.
I'm not seconding, okay.
Sorry.
Deputy Council President, thank you for that. Is there any council discussion? Oh, Council President?
Yes, so the clarification and kind of commentary that I want to make is just referencing the Issaquah School District's October 8th letter to us, explaining that based on their 2025 capital facilities plan, showing their school growth needs, that they believe that does not demonstrate the minimum eligibility for requesting school impact fees. And so if that changes, if their enrollment changes, if we have building that happens that generates students that puts them over that realm, they could make a change in the future, but that right now they do not feel that they are eligible to request school impact fees.
Council comments? It's been, oops, here we go. It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance number 3121, amending subsection 3.63.100 paren A of the Issaquah Municipal Code to revise the amount of school impact fees proposed by the city. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously. The next item on our agenda this evening is AB 9077, Fire Code Permit Fee Increase and Fee Pass-Through, and the action before council this evening is to adopt the ordinance. And I'd like to invite Building Official James Gray and Eastside Fire and Rescue Fire Marshal Jeremy Hicks to present this item.
Madam Mayor and council members, thank you for having us again. We were at PDEC here just a couple months ago and did this presentation on the fire code fees. And so we are here with our partners with Eastside Fire. I'd like to introduce Chief Aho, who is going to run the presentation for us tonight. Get my panel together. We have two recommendations tonight. The recommendation is to amend the fire permit fees as shown in Exhibit A and authorize passing the collected fire permit fees on to Eastside Fire and Rescue. And with that, I will turn it over to Chief Aho.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak before you tonight. My name is Will Aho. I'm the Assistant Chief for Eastside Fire and Rescue. Tonight, as you heard, we're here to talk about something exciting, fire permit fees and fee pass-through. No, we'll make this exciting. Just a little brief reminder of how Eastside is structured. We are made up by an interlocal agreement, which means that we have a partnership. And Issaquah has been an incredible partner since the inception of Eastside Fire and Rescue. As you see, we have 3 cities, 2 districts that we are partners with, and then we have several contract agencies. Part of the services that we provide is fire marshal services, particularly focused on all of our city partners. When we were building our 25-26 budget process, our Fire Marshal's office really wanted to take very much of a proactive look as to how we are supporting our cities. They had 3 objectives that they were taking a look at. One was to support the growth that is occurring in all of our cities, and what does that look like to make sure that not only are we meeting the expectations of the city, but also meeting the expectations of the state. Standardizing our fee schedule across all of our partner agencies. Again, that makes it easier for that transparency and consistency. So anybody that is trying to do any kind of building or construction project, then they have a good understanding of that. When you come into East Side service area, here's what our process is, here's our standardization. The other thing is making sure that we're aligning our fee structure that supports the cost of providing the services, to support the work that is being done by our fire marshal's office. Part of the discussion that we had during our budgetary process, we had asked for an additional assistant fire marshal. Again, that was our evaluation to make sure that we are keeping up with supporting the city growth. Unfortunately, there was a lot of pressure to maintain our cost control by all of our partners. And to do that, we lost the ability to add in the assistant fire marshal. However, the board did give us the ability to come up with some creative solutions to try to generate some revenue to help offset some of those costs to supporting our communities. And one of those things was looking at doing a fee structure alignment, right? It supported one of our objectives. It also was coming up with pass-throughs. So that pass-through monies would then allow us to support some of the fee structure cuts. So how we are staffed today. Our fire marshal's office is currently staffed with 6 people. East Side's portion, so that's the core partnership, is the same staffing that we have today as we did in 1999. We have 3 people. So the value to East Side Fire, and when it comes to partnership and contract service agencies, is they have brought that additional staffing with them to support the growth, which then supports East Side service area overall. We have seen that the growth in our plan reviews has gone up by nearly 15%. And we're at that tipping point where the anticipated growth, as we just heard a little bit ago, is some additional growth. We want to make sure that we're in a position to be able to support and meet the expectations of each of our city partners. Which is why we're asking for the support in the fee alignment and pass-throughs. With that, I will turn over to Fire Marshal Hicks.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, staff. Thank you for having me. For the record, Jeremy Hicks, Fire Marshal with Eastside Fire South Division. I'm going to talk about kind of some nuts and bolts of this, and I realize everybody's been here for a little bit, so I will push this along, but I want to make sure I do get all your questions answered. When we did look at these fire permits, we kind of did a assessment of what the objective is and what the problem statement is. One of them was the fee structure and the fee levels weren't consistent across the EFERD board. All the different jurisdictions were different, which really caused a problem with customer transparency. People do business here in Issaquah, also do business in all the other jurisdictions that we represent. That also came with the inconsistency of the fee structure that was confusing, not only to the contractors, the developers, but the end user, the citizens that were using or requiring these permits. And that was not only the fee structure, but the naming convention of what these permits were and how they were listed on the different fee schedules. So we've completely revamped that through all our jurisdictions to be the same. Then we looked at the cost recovery. What's the cost? What does it take? What's the cost for doing the work? And we did a really in-depth look at the amount of time it takes to do these permits, the amount of work it goes into them, from the permit issuance to the review to the inspection to the final sign-offs, and what that takes. And we collected analytics. So, we have 2,100 permits roughly that go through our system, and reviews and the inspections to cover that also. So we have a lot of analytics on what these different permit line items look like. And then basically trying to keep up with the permits that are coming in, the customer satisfaction of getting these permits out the door in a timely manner. And that was really kind of coupled with some of the new state regulations that came out, and examples would be middle housing. Another one would be the Senate bill that came out talking about permit review times, putting time limits and how long it takes to do these permits. And you have to have the staffing to be able to get these permits out the door in a timely manner. So just a little bit of alignment here. Here's all the cities and partners that we represent. The partners in the contract. You'll see that we're working through the process, and with Issaquah and Sammamish, once we move that forward, we'll be aligned across all our different jurisdictions. That's not only the permit fees, that's the naming convention, the times it takes to put these permits out, and the work that we do. This just represents a pretty quick overlook of what a residential fire sprinkler system would take to install in a house. Do note that there's no sprinkler ordinance in Issaquah to require sprinkler systems. This would be, this system here, this 13D system, is used to mitigate deficiencies, whether it has to do with fire flow, distance from a hydrant, road access, grade, stuff like that. This is the #1 mitigation option that homeowners choose to put in their residences. And this would show you that the price of that permit all the way through the inspection to the fully loaded is roughly $728. And that would go up from $544. And I got a couple examples of that.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Hall, question?
Quick clarifying question.
Yeah.
Thank you. So has Sammamish adopted the new rate yet?
So we actually go in front of council, Sammamish, next week.
I thought it already, okay, got it.
Yeah, we have already done the first reading. It's scheduled to go on consent agenda next week.
Oh, okay, understood.
Here we did the planning committee, and now we're here for full council.
Thank you.
So yes, hopefully, fingers crossed, both here very soon. Some of the analysis behind this is data. You know, I think historically in permits and how they're done, especially kind of in the world that I work in, is, you know, fees were developed some time ago, probably, if not before I was born, if, you know, definitely before I was in this field. And they've gone up by usually like a cost of living escalator, but being a spreadsheet guy and a numbers guy, I really wanted to make sure that when we started doing this and our agency wanted to support, what's the time it takes to do this? We have the analytics, let's just figure out what it is. So we were able to do how much time it takes to do it, what these time estimates are. We're able to take the permits that we have in the system and put that time to the different permits and put the variability in there. Some of the permits that are in the system weren't in the fire code. The ones that were in the fire code weren't in the system. So we have aligned all that. We looked at what it costs to do the work. What's the hourly rate of our employees to do the work, fully loaded? Then what all that does is allow us to make annual adjustments extremely easy. Every year when we go and we look at these fees, we could look at our analytics, we could look at the cost it does it, we could assign that value and print out a sheet and say, here it is. We could almost immediately in real time say, this permit takes more work or less work, and assign the value to it. And then we use regional benchmarking too, and we're below average with our permit fees and how we're assessing these. And we're able to look at different agencies around us, and their cost of doing the work might be a little bit higher for different reasons, but we're able to also track that because we're using the same naming conventions throughout our permits. So here's a couple examples. I'll spend a little time on this slide, and then the next two will fall in line. But at the top, this is a single-family residence with a sprinkler system. So this would be assuming that a house is being built, and they have to install a fire sprinkler system for some sort of mitigation option. Why I picked this is just because they pair well together, and it gives you a better example. The top is what we currently collect, or I'm sorry, the far left is what we currently collect. Fire permit review fee, or a plan review fee, that's where we do access, check hydrant fire flows, size of the building, where the building is gonna be. And then the fire system is the sprinkler permit. And that's what we currently collect. The proposed is, well, that's the proposed. And then the difference is the difference between them. So you can see the difference here would be $838 for the whole package. And this is from the beginning of the plan review. This is the pre-application meetings. This is the permit review. This is the issuance. This is the inspections, and this is the final sign-off. Down below is what the city fees would be attached to this building. So they have a building permit, a plan review fee, and a building permit fee. You would add those together, and that's what the permit fee would be for those residences. And that's just for the house. Now, that's not subsequent permits that the city would issue. I'm trying to compare apples to apples here. And I'm using that as those numbers there because the plan review fee we base it on a percentage of the plan review fee for the building. So the fire plan review and the building plan review, we're kind of, again, comparing apples to apples. And if you take that 15%, that's pretty commensurate with the work that we do compared to the building side of the plan review. This would be a townhome, a 4-unit townhome. These are real permits that are in your system. They're not something we made up. This is actually a permit that we pulled. This is a 4-unit townhome. It went in. At this particular one required a fire sprinkler system and a fire alarm system for the way it was built. And this shows you a fully loaded package. The difference would be $1,408 for 4 units. And that's the building itself. That's not per unit also. As you go up in units, the price for the fire alarm system is based on the building. The sprinkler system is based on the building. It's not based on per unit. So that cost is spread out across the whole building. And this is a larger TI. This is a very intense TI that we did here in Issaquah. And I use it, and I don't want to say the worst case scenario, but what I do want to say is I picked this one specifically because it had all the different systems in it. The plan review, the sprinkler system, the fire alarm system that had to be installed because of this business and what they were doing. And then also with a fire sprinkler system, a commercial system, they had to install an underground. And I chose this because the underground work that we do is one of the most labor intensive, not only for plan review, but also for inspections. They take somewhere around 7 hours of inspection and 2 to 3 hours of review time. So it's a very labor intensive, and you can see that we had it at $283, which is way below the total cost recovery around that. So that brings it up. Again, these permits are still lower than regional partners that are doing this, but it is in line with our total cost recovery. And you can see, I think the valuation on this building was somewhere around $2.1 million in just construction costs. So $2.1 million building, total permits out the door, inspected would be $7,100 and change. So historically, thanks to the city, they helped provide some of these slides for us. This is the revenue that was generated by fire permit throughout the years from 2020 to 2025. Like anything, you can see some years people build more, some don't. So that changes around. 2021 must have been a really busy year here in the city of Issaquah. This right here that illustrates just some differences. So in 2024, the plan review fee that we did, and this is again just reviewing the buildings, was around $19,000, and the fire systems, that's sprinkler systems, alarm systems, hood systems, underground, anything that's a system permit, was around $43,000. The proposed increase, applying the values that I showed you in the slides before, using the 2024 numbers, would change, show you the difference there in the review fee of $26,000 and the fire system permits at $25,000. Anticipating using those same number of value or those same variables would be about $110,000 to $25,000 permit fee range for that. Now that will change depending on number of permits, type of permits, building, construction type, stuff like that. So where we're at. Well, we went to the PD&E committee on the 7th with a recommended move to the full council whole with the recommendation to be here tonight. And we're here, November 10th, to do this. What you have in front of you is a recommendation to amend the fire permit fees as shown in Exhibit A within your packet. And then the recommendation to passing the collected fees, permit fees through to East Side Fire and Rescue. I am able to entertain any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Because I'm also going to go to the committee chair as well. Questions now? Oh, Councilman Ray?
Yes. So are we just really not doing cost recovery? Because these are fairly steep increases in fees. And so I'm trying to gauge, you know, if I've got a 200% increase year to year, what am I getting for that additional dollars? I mean, and how were we paying for it before? And give me the backstory here about why all of a sudden we're seeing, you know, not incremental increases, but I'm seeing a big step function.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the beginning of your conversation there was where you were with permit fees. Were you low? I think the answer is obviously yes in some of those categories. The big part was in the plan review fee. As you notice in that $2.1 million building that went, we collected $236 for plan review. I know we spent probably 25 hours in plan review working on that building. So that was the largest part here, is that getting the plan review commiserate with the work that's actually being done. The other thing is just sheerly the time that we put on task. We now have the analytics that we can look back at these 2,100 or 2,600 permits a year that we're able to look at in the inspections to go, this is the cost that an employee takes. This is the time it takes to do the work. Now, when you see the 236, I get you. I mean, I'm with you on that one. But if we go back to kind of a basilar level and look at that permit and then compare it with regional partners, we're not 236% above regional partners. We're actually at or below what the regional partners are at.
So we just weren't doing a very good job of cost recovery historically. We were spending more time than we were really billing for the service, and we were finding other ways to kind of cover those costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Councilmember Hall, as Chair of the Planning Development Environment Committee, would you like to summarize the committee's recommendation on this item?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the committee felt that this update met all the major kind of policy objectives that the EFR board had originally spoke to, standardizing fees across the service area for both uniformity and consistency. That new formula developed to more accurately reflect true costs, as we were just talking about, and then, of course, supporting the fire marshal services by acknowledging growth and sustainable growth. We at committee also acknowledged that this is a large increase, and so we asked staff to track whether it becomes a barrier to development or a hardship to residents, and also to monitor its impact on our own revenue needs. But we still felt coming into consistency with the rest of the EFR service area was the right call, and we recommend council adoption tonight.
Thank you. Council questions? I am not seeing any. Councilmember Hall, would you care to make a motion?
I would, as soon as I
Find
it. I move to adopt ordinance number, that was 3122, amending section 16.06.245 of the Issaquah Municipal Code to adopt updated operational permit fees for permits issued under the International Fire Code, repealing and replacing section 16.06.250 of the Issaquah Municipal Code relating to the fire code permit fees, and authorizing the city to collect and remit fire permit fees to Eastside Fire and Rescue.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any council discussion?
Nothing else to add, just I urge everyone's adoption.
Any other council discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you very much. Sorry for the late hour. Thanks for coming back. The next item on regular business is AB 9074, the 2026 legislative agenda, and I'd like to invite management analyst Jillian Straub and government affairs consultant Shelley Helder, who's joining us virtually, to present this item.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Happy to be here tonight to discuss the 2026 legislative session, our priorities, and what we can expect from the legislature this year. So tonight we're going to discuss the proposed changes or updates to the 2025-2026 legislative agenda and policy manual that was adopted by Council in late 2024. Items have been removed that were addressed in the previous session, and items have been added that are emerging issues. We'll also be providing an overview of the expectations for the 2026 session. We'll also be seeking your adoption of the legislative policy manual and agenda at this meeting. We'll be recommending approval of the 2026 legislative agenda and policy manual as proposed tonight in advance of the session so we can begin work with our legislators. And with that, I'd like to pass it off to Shelley Helder, our lobbyist, to take the bulk of this presentation.
Thank you, Jillian, and good evening, Mayor and Council. The 2026 legislative session is going to be the second year of the biennium, and that makes it a short 60-day session. The primary purpose of the short session is to adopt updates to the biennial budgets, and those updates are referred to as the supplemental budgets. In addition to adopting the supplemental budgets, every bill that was introduced in the 2025 session that did not pass into law will be automatically reintroduced for consideration in 2026, and legislators can introduce new bills. In the 2025 session, the legislature made pretty substantial cuts to state expenses and raised new revenue in order to achieve a balanced operating budget. Since the legislature has adjourned, there has been a couple revenue forecasts. The most recent forecast showed a decrease of over $400 million in state revenues in the current biennium and nearly $500 million in the next biennium. This means that the legislature will need to look for additional cost savings and or find new revenue to balance the supplemental budget during the 2026 session. It is worth noting that the state has 3 budgets. So while the operating budget is the largest of the 3, the capital and the transportation budgets are not facing the same challenges. The capital budget is the most stable of the 3 budgets since it's funded primarily through the sale of bonds. The state has $349 million in bonding capacity for a supplemental budget. That's a relatively small amount when you consider the biennial capital budget is $7 billion. The transportation budget funds a mix of both operations and capital projects focused on the state's transportation system. Relative to past years, the transportation budget is not facing a major deficit, but budget writers have said they will plan to remain focused on delivering the projects that are already underway and increasing the state's commitment to maintenance and preservation funding. Democrats will continue to hold safe majorities in both the House and the Senate, and caucus leadership and committee assignments will remain the same for the 2026 session. Following the short session, the entire House and half of the Senate will be up for re-election. For this reason, as well as just the logistical challenges of passing a bill in 60 days, we typically don't see controversial policies pass in short sessions. Next slide. So the city adopts 2 legislative documents that guide our engagement in Olympia. The first is the legislative agenda, which lists the city's top 3 to 5 priorities. And these are the issues that have the greatest and the most direct impact on the city. And they can either be funding requests or requests to change state law. The second document is the policy manual, and this is more of a reference document. And this lists the city's positions on various policies that may or may not arise during the legislative session. So this is a more reactive document, whereas the legislative agenda is proactive. Because the legislative process is fast-paced, the policy manual allows us to engage in a meaningful way if a bill that would impact city business is introduced, say on a Friday and then scheduled for a public hearing on a Monday. So the policy manual is an important document for that reason. Next slide. So before I describe the proposed priorities for 2026, I just want to remind you all that as a best practice, we have advised the city to adopt a legislative agenda that takes into account the state's 2-year budget cycle. So this means that in even numbered years, the city's legislative agenda typically includes items that were either not achieved in the first year of the biennium or items that are laying the groundwork for the next biennium. So for 2026, we have 3 priorities being recommended to carry forward. Complete the safety improvements on State Route 18, city financial sustainability, and digital permitting system upgrades. For the State Route 18 improvements, we are continuing to coordinate with the Southeast Area Legislative Transportation Coalition, or CLTC. And I will note that in 2025, the city's legislators fought to keep the funds for SR 18 phased in accordance with the project's needs. And based on recent correspondence with WSDOT, the project timeline, the delivery, has not been delayed because of the phasing of those funds. So I think that's a really significant outcome. The ask for this coming session is to retain the funds that have been allocated to phase 1 of the project. And as a reminder, phase 1 is from Deep Creek to Tiger Mountain Summit and includes the construction of roundabouts at Issaquah Hobart Road. There's also a desire from the CLTC group to look for more interim safety improvements, since while phase 1 is funded, it is going to take a long time to come to be constructed. And then finally, as a longer term request, there is still a need to identify funding for phase 2, which is Tiger Mountain Summit to Issaquah Hobart Road, and that would complete the widening and safety improvements through the corridor. The second priority is to continue highlighting the city's financial challenges. As the state has discussions about cutting their costs and identifying alternative revenue, it's important for legislators to be reminded of the limitations as well as the obligations that are placed on the city. And then finally, we are continuing with the request in partnership with other eCity Gov Alliance jurisdictions in asking the state for $2.7 million towards a new back-end permitting software system. And for those of you who are still sharp at this late hour, you'll think, well, why are we asking for $2.7 million if the state's facing a really challenging budget? Yes, the state is facing a challenging budget, so this amount does feel unlikely, but we know that addressing permitting delays is one of the governor's priorities, and in their agency budget request, the Department of Commerce has highlighted or has requested $3 million to administer grants to local governments for permit system improvements. So there's clearly still momentum out there to improve local government permitting. We know there's also going to be bills coming forward wanting to streamline and expedite local permitting. And because the need still exists at with the eCity Gov Alliance, and because this aligns with the governor and the legislature's desire to minimize or reduce barriers to housing construction, we still think it makes sense to advance this request, particularly because it is a coalition request, is why the amount is reasonable. We are not recommending adding priorities to the list at this time, but we have removed the items that have been achieved at the first part of the biennium or are no longer city priorities. Next slide. The proposed policy manual is mostly unchanged from the current version. There are 3 new statements that are being recommended to address emerging issues. The first is a statement in support of legislation that would clearly define e-motorcycles. Sometimes people are referring to these as e-bikes, but really I think one of the challenges is there's not a definition of what this vehicle is. There's some gray area between whether it's an e-bike or whether it's a motorcycle. And so the request is for legislation to establish definitions and standards for ownership and operation of these vehicles.
Shelley, I know you can't see the room, but Deputy Council President DeMichelle would like to ask you a question.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was hoping to wait till you were finished, but when we were at the chamber, we heard a lot of angst about the new tax that's been imposed on professional services. Do you have any idea of how the legislature might address that or might mitigate some of those some of those new taxes? And should we be thinking about adding that to this list?
Yes, you were actually, you took my next statement right out of my mouth. So the second statement there is a statement in support of refining the recently implemented taxes on digital advertising and other services that have historically not been subject to sales tax. For example, live presentations. And as Council Member DeMichelle mentioned, or Deputy Council President DeMichelle mentioned, the particular concern is impact on small businesses.
Right.
So there is a statement in the policy manual that is looking for solutions of how to minimize impact on small businesses. One idea that I will say is not broadly floated, but has been discussed, is potentially pushing out the effective date for businesses below a certain size. That would have to be implemented retroactively because the law is already in effect. The reason that is a proposed idea as opposed to eliminating it completely is because of the state's budget challenges. There's a lot of mindfulness around any policy being proposed that has a really significant hit to the state's budget, and the reality that if it is going to further minimize the state's revenue, it will decrease the chances of it passing.
Yeah, and can I just say that, well, first of all, I got confused by the words digital advertising, so sorry. But yeah, I've just been hearing from a lot of nonprofits. I think it's because it's so murky. They're not really sure. And the presentations part of that, especially for like PTAs who hire people to come in and just give a presentation to kids, or and even a small organization like Influence the Choice, we do educational outreach, and there might be a small fee. So it's like, it's really unclear. Should we pay taxes on that? You know, traditionally these have been really sort of past very small income. It's almost incredible that we'd have to do reporting on it and so forth. So anyway, it's a big interest from people that I'm hearing from.
Yeah, yes. I do know, because the bill was introduced and passed so quickly at the end of session, there's a lot of confusion about what the legislature intended. And I know that there will be efforts to clarify what that legislative intent is, but there's not, so Department of Revenue is requesting a bill to clarify legislative intent, but there's not an expectation that that clarification and those technical changes will have a fiscal impact. I do know there are other legislators that are interested in bringing forward changes to help particular groups. I've had conversations with Department of Revenue, Association of Washington Business, Washington Retail Association. And there's lots of ideas floating around. How viable any of them are, I don't know at this time.
Shelley, could you also share a little bit about the DOR conversation we had, which is that for all these smaller entities, non-compliance during confusion could be a significant issue. If they are randomly chosen for an audit and found not to have submitted during this period of time, the penalties could actually put small organizations out of business. And there is no leniency right now in the application of the DOR rules. So somebody who doesn't know what to do and isn't doing it 3 years from now could be found to, they have to pay the penalty.
Yeah, and I think Mayor Polly, that's a good point. We discovered that in our conversation with Department of Revenue, that there's no leniency
forgiveness
in this time. While there's not even official rules out yet, there's interim guidance for businesses, and they did that because the effective date of the taxes was so quick after the legislature passed the bill. There hasn't been time for the agency to get the rules fully out there. So there is a lot of confusion. They're working towards the rules, but in the meantime, businesses are expected to comply. We meaning Mayor and I, when we met with Department of Revenue, we're told that businesses can reach out to Department of Revenue and ask for an official ruling on whether they need to comply or not. But that means individual businesses are reaching out, requesting rulings, and there may not be consistency in what Department of Revenue is telling one business versus another. So that's, I think, one of the concerns that the legislature is wanting to address in this upcoming session.
And I think you're good to continue now.
Okay, great. The final statement that's being proposed for the policy manual is a statement in support of state resources for migrant due process and protections from racial profiling in immigration enforcement. Next slide. So on the screen are upcoming dates that are relevant for this discussion. Of course, this evening is opportunity for council to discuss and decide on these documents. On December 3rd, 4th, and 5th, the House and Senate will be in Olympia for committee assembly days, which is kind of the unofficial start to the legislative session. It's when a lot of the work that needs to be done in order to get bills through the process in the short 60 days, it's done during committee days. And then the official start of the legislative session is on January 12th. The Association of Washington Cities is hosting their City Action Days the second week of session. That's the January 21st and 22nd. And then with the short 60 days, there's ample opportunity, and I think it's important to stay connected with our state legislators and engaged with other key legislators on the issues that we're working. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jillian.
That really wraps up our presentation. We're seeking council feedback and approval of the legislative agenda at this time.
Thanks. Okay, so we've had a few questions, but let's just go around and see, are there any other council questions on Jillian or Shelley's work? I'm not seeing any. Is there a motion? Council President?
I move we approve the 2026 legislative agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there council discussion? Council President? Oh, before we proceed, can I just see if Council Member Hall, Representative Hall might have to put in a disclosure here?
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just read this little short statement. So as you know, in addition to serving on the Issaquah City Council, I serve in the state's House of Representatives. Because of this, it is possible that my vote on the legislative agenda could be viewed as creating the appearance of a conflict of interest. Accordingly, I've chosen to recuse myself from this vote. Thank you.
Does he have to leave? No. Bye, Zach. Bye.
No, you don't have to leave. You can stay.
Oh,
it's not quasi-judicial. No. You're good.
I was looking at her. She kind of looked like you had to leave. Okay, so now we're into council discussion. Council President.
Thank you. I always appreciate the work of our legislative team and all of the hard work that goes into this. I think we can clearly see the work of our lobbyists in the fact that we have accomplished many of the things that were on our legislative agenda. So I want to start with that and just create a clear appreciation. I also understand that this is a second year in the cycle, and typically we would not make large changes to this, but I have to reference, what has happened in our community and the large impact there has been to having, fear related to immigration enforcement and the potential for masked law enforcement within our cities. And so I would like to offer an amendment which would add a fourth section to the legislative agenda page as follows. Immigrant protections. And I know I had sent this. I don't know if it's possible to put it up on the screen or anything like that. But but I will read out. Issaquah requests the legislature strengthen monitoring and policies of the Keep Washington Working Act to close data sharing loopholes, such as those from ALPR cameras, automated license plate reading cameras, strengthen protections and access to vulnerable locations such as healthcare facilities, courthouses, shelters, and schools, and require all law enforcement display visible identification, including agency emblems and badges, while banning the use of face-concealing items.
Is there a second?
Absolutely, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there a discussion? Council President?
Thank you. I feel like this is the important commitment that we made by adopting a letter and statement in order to say this is something that happened to our community. This is very important to many residents, as we saw from the community, the deep community commentary that we received last month, as well as the over 1,500 people, I believe, that came out to the Dia de los Muertos event, showing their support. And so this merely takes some of the items that were in our statement and makes it clear that this is an important legislative item to us as council.
Any other comments? Councilmember Zhang?
I fully agree with everything that's been said. I think, one of the things that we've acknowledged in our response is that we as cities can't really do that much. And I think, passing these protections at the state level is really kind of how we have to go about it. I do have a question about the amendment language on vulnerable locations, like specifically on shelters. Is that something that's been defined as a sensitive location in the past?
I took that information out of the Attorney General's interpretation of sensitive locations, and so it was a specific list out of that.
Perfect. Yeah, because I know one that we've also spoken about, is churches and other religious facilities. That's not on this list. But I think if it's from the Attorney General's list, then that's great.
Councilmember Ray.
I have a question. It's more procedural than anything else. Are you suggesting that this language is a new priority for 2025, or is it an addition to the policy manual?
So my suggestion was that as our legislative agenda, so not the policy manual, but the actual legislative agenda, which with the proposal here would shrink from, 5 or 6 items to 3, that we then add this 4th item to recognize the important.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure kind of where you were slotting it. So you're putting a new priority on the 2025 agenda. Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I think the difference is that there'd be an expectation then that the council will actively participate in testimony at the state level. That's the difference between the two. Any other questions? Any other discussion? Not seeing any. If there's no further discussion, the motion before council. Oh, hang on a sec. I'm going to do the amendment. The amendment before council is a proposal to add a 4th priority of immigrant protections. Issaquah requests the legislature strengthen monitoring and policies of the Keep Washington Working Act to close data sharing loopholes such as those from ALPR cameras, strengthen protections and access to vulnerable locations such as healthcare facilities, courthouses, shelters, and schools, and require all law enforcement display visible identification, including agency emblems and badges, while banning the use of face-concealing items. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? That carries 7-0. And are there additional amendments or comments, or going back to the main motion? Not seeing any additional.
Mayor Polly, can I make a quick clarification with Councilmember Hall? So if you choose not to vote, it will be considered an abstention and counted as a yes vote. If you truly do not want a 7th count on this vote, then you would need to leave the room. So I'm just wanted you to be aware of your procedure, our procedure.
My
here.
apologies. It's in the council rules of procedure, not state law.
So do you want to be the 7 and no?
That was just the amendment of
do you want the 6? That was the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, Zach. Okay, thank you for the clarification, and if there's no additional council discussion, the motion before council is to approve the 2026 legislative agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries 6-0. Councilmember Holly can go back in the room. Okay. Committee and regional reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Zhang.
Great, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have reports from the King County Cities Climate Collaborative, or K4C. We had an in-person meeting of the Electeds Committee on October 24th. The two main events were that Representative Joe Fitzgibbon came and spoke about the Climate Commitment Act and answered questions from electeds from dozens of cities, so that was really great. And then also staff from Puget Sound Energy came and spoke about the status of their compliance with the climate requirements from the state. And a lot of what they talked about was actually some of the challenges they're facing with things like grid reliability. You might have seen that report in the Seattle Times. And then also challenges related to building out transmission infrastructure and challenges related to siting battery energy storage systems within communities. One particularly memorable exchange was a mayor of the town of Pacific asked, how we would love to have a small nuclear facility near us. Would you do that? And the guy from PSC said, I can't even get any of you to cite a battery. So that was definitely really interesting. And then we also had a K4C Electeds Committee meeting on last Friday, which was November 7th. So there were some questions about, kind of what are someone from the Department of Ecology presented about the CCA. And so, there are a lot of questions about how CCA funds are spent, particularly around mitigating air pollution in overburdened communities. And so I think that's something that there's, ongoing discussions about, and I will keep you updated on any such conversations. And then an update, there is an East Side Transportation Partnership meeting this Friday, November 14th.
Thank you. Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Cascade Water Alliance Board will be meeting on November 19th. A Cascade Water Alliance monthly report has been sent to your email boxes. It should be there tomorrow. LTAC will be meeting on the 17th, 3:30 in the afternoon for our quarterly meeting at the Spring Hill Suites Hotel. Chamber Board will be meeting on 11/21. Wally and I will be liaisoning with the board to let them know what's going on with the council. And the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee is scheduled to meet on Monday, 11/24, the Monday of Thanksgiving week, to discuss an item that's on the docket that I can't remember right now, but look at the docket when you have a chance. Thanks. Goodbye.
Thank you, Councilmember Joe. Councilmember Hall, welcome back.
I'm back. One quick report, Eastside Fire and Rescue. Our next board meeting is this Thursday, November 13th. Our agenda includes several promotions. We have our apparatus financing agreement with Fire District 10, which is great news and means we can finally get back on track with purchasing some much needed apparatus, starting with a couple engines and aid cars. An update on an interim agreement with Fire District 27. This is Fall City. To provide fire administrative services. So incoming Chief Aho will essentially act as their fire chief, just like what we did with Mercer Island when they were starting off, before they were a contract city. I just want to be clear, there's no added cost to the EFOR partners. Everything is paid for by Fall City in this contract, and there's no expectation of partner costs in the future. This is simply a way to bring them a little bit into the EFOR family as we have a broader conversation about the region's funding and governance structure moving forward. Anyways, if you have more questions about that, let's chat. We'll also be approving the firefighter collective bargaining agreement, which was a major 1.5-year effort. So we couldn't thank Chief Lane before he walked off, but he has put so much effort into that. Also, we'll be approving Chief Lane's performance review for the year and adopting the incoming Fire Chief Will Aho's new contract, which I have been very busily negotiating over the last few weeks. Also, mark your calendars in case you'd like to join. Chief Lane's retirement celebration is scheduled for Monday, November 24th at Station 31 in Woodinville, where he started. So if you'd like to come, let me know, and I'll make sure to get you RSVP'd. Oh, you would? Okay.
I got a committee meeting.
Oh, there's a committee meeting? Oh, shoot. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that this Thursday will be my last meeting as EFER chair. SMAMISH Director Pam Stewart will be taking over in December, and I would just like to put in a plug to talk with anyone, current council member or perhaps incoming council member, who might like to serve as a Eastside Fire and Rescue alternate in the new year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Ray.
No report this evening.
Councilmember Mertz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Sound Cities Association has two things coming up on Wednesday, November 12th. They have a pre-PIC presentation that's actually open to all PIC members, or sorry, all SCA members, so it's not PIC specific, but it's occurring right before the PIC, to discuss the upcoming rate summit that will be occurring. There's going to be a summit meeting at the Hilton Seattle Airport on the 14th, and so this meeting on the 12th is really to discuss, to sort of tee up the conversation, and it's really being driven by rates skyrocketing across utilities throughout the King County area, and strategies that cities can come up with to address that. Then at 7 o'clock, and that's an online meeting, by the way, so everybody should have received an invitation to that. Then at 7 o'clock, there is the Public Issues Committee meeting. A number of issues: SCA 2026 State Legislative Agenda and County Priorities, Transit Safety and Security Briefing, Unapproved Food Vendors Briefing, and a PSRC Committee restructuring discussion, which should prove to be extremely lively. And hopefully, as a two-touch system, I will be back to talk to council about how that conversation goes. And then, pardon me, Services, Safety, and Parks will be meeting on Tuesday, November 18th at 6:30 here in council chambers. We only have one item on the agenda currently, and that is COM 0128, e-motorcycle and e-bicycle ordinance, proposed ordinance. So we will be seeing that in committee and then reporting back to the full council. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Deputy Council President DeMichelle.
Oops. Thank you, Mayor Polly. Is this an appropriate time to report on our convening, or
Oh, I think that would be great.
right
Yeah,
now?
please add that in.
Yeah, otherwise I have no regional reports, but Thursday morning, Mayor Polly and I did I think our fourth convening of nonprofits in the Issaquah area. We had 16 different agencies that attended, and we heard, and I'll just be very general about it, but again, the impacts of federal and state cuts on local provision of human services, discussion from many that there is a great deal of fear and anxiety, not understanding whether or not SNAP benefits would arrive. I believe I heard from the governor's office that they did arrive this month, but not sure about next month. And there was a large infusion of state money into local food banks, which was, I'm sure, very welcome. So we continue to take input from our local human services, and then Mayor Polly is putting together a letter or a memo that goes to our elected officials, our state and federal officials, so that they can represent what's happening on the ground to their colleagues. So I think we settled on December 12th for the next one.
Yeah.
Because the situation is so volatile, we decided to have these a little bit more often, so that we have a really good picture of what's happening from month to month. So that's my report. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Council President?
No report this evening.
And for the mayor's report, there will not be an executive session this evening. I'd like to provide an update on the union negotiations for AFSCME contract extension. The collective bargaining agreements with 7 of the city's 8 unions expire at the same time, December 31st, 2025. While negotiations continue with 6 of the units for successor agreements, AFSCME, or the Washington State Council of County and City Employees, Issaquah Administrative Staff Association, have come to an agreement for a 1-year contract extension, which was placed on tonight's consent agenda. The 1-year extension is helping the city move towards its goal to stagger the contract end dates over a 3-year period versus having them all expire, mostly all expire together. Tonight, the City Council approved on consent the vendor agreement, and I think I talked enough about that in the main meeting, so I think I'll skip to the next one, which is upcoming events. Please join me at the Veterans Day Service event at the Senior Center tomorrow. VFW post number 3436 please join them for this Veterans Day celebration for 2 special events honoring the courage and sacrifice of America's heroes. Begin with the Veterans Day service at 11 a.m., featuring a stirring performance by Liberty High School Juniors ROTC, a formal flag presentation, and special recognition of veterans in attendance. I will also be there to deliver the keynote address. Then return at 7 p.m. for an inspiring presentation detailing the powerful story of the USS Indianapolis and its brave crew during World War II. Guest speaker Kim Roller, an honorary survivor named by the ship's actual survivors, Kim, as an honorary survivor named by the ship's actual survivors, will share their extraordinary experience with family members of the crew in attendance. Join your community in honoring those who served and sacrificed for our freedom. There is an opportunity to learn tips for a zero waste holiday. This class that's being offered will share ways to store food to keep it fresh longer, meal planning, and using parts of food we may not normally use. All attendees will receive a guide to online tools for meal planning and storing food with samples and live demos included. Register today for this first class on Friday, November 14th at noon. The class is part of a series of free monthly online classes that can help you learn useful, sustainable tips. Further details can be found on the city's website. And we are now going to move to good of the order. Items for good of the order. Council President, followed by Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. So I want to bring something in front of council related to the conversation about Metroflex and the contract. Per the administration, we would need to make a motion to encourage or direct staff to work on making amendments. But to do that, we need to waive the council new business request rule to allow discussion of potential amendments on the November 17th council agenda. So I'm wondering if there are any concerns to waiving our rules to allow the administration to put this on the November 17th council agenda.
Are there any objections to waiving the rules? As long as it's not on the topic, because we're not allowed to actually talk about this without having noticed people that we might be talking on something. No, process is great.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just have a process question, so am I hearing right? Because I thought council gave direction to the administration to pursue funding Metroflex with TBD dollars. Is the administration asking for something more formal? Is that why?
No, council president would like to have a conversation at a council meeting and is asking to waive the rules to get it added to the next Monday's agenda, but not about that.
Yeah. It wasn't about the funding portion, but rather the terms of the contract. So for example, one of them was the boundaries of that contract, which would require us to take action, separate from budget conversations.
So your action for tonight is very much procedural. Do you want to waive your rules? Head nods will do. And then add it as an agenda item, and it will come back on November 17th.
Yes.
Okay, head nods, waiving the rules. So it will be an agenda item. Is there any other good of the order business? Councilmember Hall, Councilmember Joe.
Yes, I'm sorry. I would skip, but I have to say this tonight, and I'm sorry. I know it's late, but and like I've said a couple times before, today even, as you all know, I was appointed to the state legislature back in June, and as the legislative session is quickly approaching, I've been thinking more seriously about my service here on the city council, and have decided to resign my seat at the end of the year. I have submitted a letter to that effect to city clerk, to our city administrator. I have another one here for the mayor and for the council president. I will have a lot more to say about my time here, about the professionalism of our staff, and about the promise of our work in the coming weeks. I think we have a meeting in December where the three of us that are taking off can speak a little bit. But for now, I just want to say that serving the Issaquah community, my hometown, in this way has been the greatest honor and privilege of my life. And I look forward to partnering with you all in new ways. And I also just want to say that this decision comes primarily from a sense of comfort and confidence that this council is in very, very good hands with all of you. Very much so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any else? Oh, sorry, Councilmember Joe? Next.
Thank you. I just would like to thank the mayor and council members that attended the Dia de los Muertos event last Sunday. It was mentioned that there were 15 to 1,700 people in attendance. It was a great event. Very nice to see our whole community come out, supporting one another and enjoying fellowship with each other. Thank you to everyone that attended and supported that event.
Great event. Any other good of the order? I have a few meetings to announce. The next regular council meeting is on Monday, November 17th, and the anticipated agenda items include Central Issaquah Multimodal I-90 Crossing Study Update, the 2026 Property Levy Tax, the 2025-2026 Mid-Biennium Budget Adjustment, and a conversation on Metroflex. There is no executive session this evening, and so therefore, oh, I can't look at that one. Therefore, we are adjourned at 10:48.